Good morning, everybody. It is 10 o'clock here in Geneva, 12 o'clock in Moscow. Welcome to the webinar, Decarbonizing Transport with Natural Gas, organized by the UNECE group of experts on gas in collaboration with the Ministry of Energy of the Russian Federation. This webinar will take about 3.5 hours. We have a number of very interesting speakers, and a formal opening will start in about 10 minutes from now. At 12 o'clock, there will be a short break, and then we will continue until about 1:30 Geneva, Central European time. We will now walk you through the program, but before we do so, I will ask my colleague Nadezhda, who is co-organizing this and is principally responsible, to walk us through some housekeeping rules. So please, the next slide, Nadezhda, and tell us what we need to know. Thank you.
Dear colleagues, good morning, good afternoon. Today we're going to have the simultaneous interpretation during this webinar in English and in Russian. You have the two channels, so please choose the one that is more appropriate and for you. You can also you can switch from Russian into English. Please also note that this session will be streamed on YouTube channel, but it will be with Russian interpretation. The recording of it will be also available. The recording from this Zoom session will be also available after this event. As Branko already mentioned, the meeting will take place roughly 3.5 hours, and we plan to have break in between the presentations also. I will try to share all PowerPoint slides from one screen to avoid the technical issues. I apologize in advance if I will have certain technical limitations from my side. We're trying also to switch off the microphones and camera of participants unless it's the speaker who is going to be speaking, or unless you raise the hand for asking a question or commenting. In this case, you will be unmuted and your camera will be switched on. So please do, we encourage you to use the chat for asking your questions and comments, or if you would like to ask a question immediately after the presentation, please also use the function of raising a hand and we will give you the floor. Just to mention that all the presentations after this event will be also posted on the ECE website. Thank you.
Nadezhda, just one question. Where do we see the channel? Where do I find the channel to switch from English to?
That should be in the bottom of when you have the possibility to mute, when you have possibility to see the camera, mute.
Where we have interpretation?
Yes, yes. So you have participants down there, okay, participants chat.
Thank you very much.
Most
Sorry,
welcome.
I'm not so used to. Okay, yep. Thank you. I still have to do it in English, but very soon I will do it in Russian because I'm taking lessons. Since the pandemic, I spend my time to learn Russian, which is difficult.
Okay, so I would like to encourage everybody to use the chat function. You can also see down there. And please go there, send any comments in Russian or English or any language for that matter, so we can address those questions or some of them during the open floor chat towards the end of this webinar. Now, let's move on. We are going to the welcoming remarks. Next slide, please. We have here three important persons to tell us the importance of the use of gas in transport. We will start with Mr. Anton Inyutsin, the Deputy Minister of Energy of the Russian Federation. Mr. Inyutsin, the floor is yours.
Hello, dear colleagues. My language will be Russian because a lot of participants speaks Russian. Уважаемые коллеги, рад приветствовать вас на первом семинаре в рамках проекта Европейской экономической комиссии ООН. Это повышение потенциала государств, членов Европейской экономической комиссии по декарбонизации транспортного сектора за счет увеличения использования природного газа в качестве моторного топлива. Ну, во-первых, с развитием мировой экономики возрастает роль экологии, особую значимость приобретает использование именно чистых источников энергии и, конечно же, прежде всего на транспортном секторе. Автомобильный транспорт является самым крупным источником выбросов вредных веществ с долей почти 50% от общего объема выбросов. А в крупных городах доля достигает 80-90%. Поэтому масштабный перевод общественного и коммерческого транспорта на более экологичные виды топлива, прежде всего природный газ, играет ключевую роль для решения экологической проблемы. Ну, во-первых, использование природного газа на транспорте позволяет на треть снизить объем выбросов в атмосферу. И если брать применительно, например, к нашей стране, на 60-65% снижает затраты владельцев по сравнению с традиционным жидким топливом. За счет своих экологических свойств и значительной экономии использование природного газа как моторного топлива может стать одним из заметных факторов улучшения жизни граждан. По разным оценкам, к 2040 году объем глобального рынка природного газа в качестве моторного топлива может составить до 220-250 миллиардов кубометров газа. При этом мы понимаем, чтобы достичь таких показателей, необходима тесная кооперация между государством, бизнесом, международными организациями. И в этой связи весьма своевременно и важно то, что Европейская экономическая комиссия ООН запускает этот проект, направленный на расширение использования природного газа на транспорте. И уверен, что этот проект будет полезен всем странам региона, а также позволит разработать конкретные рекомендации для развития рынков газомоторного топлива. Второе. Значит, что касается России, то мы реализуем масштабную программу развития рынка. Она включает многие виды транспорта, и автомобильный, и водный, и железнодорожный. За последние 2 года у нас значительно ускорилось строительство заправочной инфраструктуры, обеспечена возможность льготного переоборудования транспорта на природный газ для, прежде всего, малого и среднего бизнеса, самозанятых и просто населения. Сейчас я вот за мной буквально нахожусь на газовой заправке в Республике Татарстан. По итогам года здесь будет введено 7 заправочных комплексов благодаря государственной поддержке. И мы исходим из необходимости формирования национального рынка, чтобы можно было заправиться на всей территории страны. К 2030 году планируется дополнительно ввести 1300 заправок, построить около 200 КРИО АЗС на транспортных коридорах и порядка 50 малотоннажных заводов. Общее количество техники на природном газе должно увеличиться больше, чем в 5 раз и достигнуть почти 700 тысяч единиц. Благодаря принимаемым нами мерам, активному вовлечению регионов, а также вот частного сектора, по прогнозам к 2030 году объем потребления газа в качестве моторного топлива в России возрастет почти до 7 миллиардов кубометров. Я вот хотел, кстати, отметить, что у нас даже по итогам, коллеги, этого года планируется 10%, несмотря на вот эту пандемическую яму в 3 месяца, планируется рост на 10% потребления газа. И по нашим оценкам, вот, например, если бы не было вот этой ямы, да, если бы не было вообще пандемии, и была бы такая же активность деловая, как и раньше, то в этом году мы могли бы в 2 раза увеличить потребление газа по сравнению с 3-летним периодом. Я имею в виду по сравнению с 3 годами назад. Важную роль в вопросах расширения использования природного газа на транспорте играет информированность населения и бизнеса. Поэтому в рамках Всероссийского фестиваля энергосбережения и экологии «Вместе ярче», который проходит по всей стране, организуются разного рода демонстрационные площадки автотехники на метане, проходят встречи с населением, где можно пообщаться с представителями газоснабжающих организаций, автозаводов, предприятий по переоборудованию автотехники. Мы готовы совместно работать со странами Европейской экономической комиссии ООН с целью популяризации использования природного газа в качестве моторного топлива, а также делиться своим опытом в части совершенствования законодательства в области регулирования, планирования, развития производственно-сырьевой инфраструктуры, а также технического оснащения объектов. И хотел бы предложить в качестве идеи заинтересованным странам, компаниям, международным организациям подумать о возможности запуска международной инициативы в области газомоторного топлива, которая стала бы единым центром компетенций и способствовала развитию газомоторного топлива по всему миру. Уважаемые друзья, коллеги, желаю всем успешной плодотворной работы и рассчитываю, что этот семинар не будет последним.
Thank you, Mr. Inyutin. Apologies to all. We are aware that the English interpretation did not work well. With this, they didn't work at all. So we will have to translate Mr. Inyutin's doklad presentation, and it will post on our website and in YouTube as well. So apologies to all. We hope to fix this technical problem interpretation. Now, we cannot wait with this, so we have to move on and give the floor to Mr. Alexander Limov, the Deputy Permanent Representative of the Russian Federation to the UN in Geneva. Mr. Alimov, please.
Доброе утро. Меня слышно, да?
Да.
Dear colleagues, I will also speak in Russian, but let me just summarize what I'm going to say. It's going to be a general statement supporting by the Russian Federation of this project, of this initiative, on this whole idea of using natural gas in transport. So with this, уважаемый Антон Юрьевич, уважаемые участники семинара, ровно год назад Министерство энергетики России выступило с предложением использовать потенциал Европейской экономической комиссии ООН для содействия странам-членам декарбонизации транспортного сектора за счет использования природного газа в качестве топлива. Мы очень рады, что эта инициатива получила широкую поддержку и была оперативно оформлена секретариатом ЕКА ООН в проектное предложение. Сегодняшний семинар – это первый практический шаг по ее реализации. Для осуществления проекта будут задействованы возможности группы экспертов по газу ЕКА ООН, которая является востребованной многосторонней площадкой для продвижения инициатив в области экологического чистого производства, распределения потребления газа в регионе ЕКА ООН. Важно, что на только что прошедшей сессии Комитета по устойчивой энергетике ЕКА ООН страны-члены приветствовали данный проект, признали его роль в развитии инфраструктуры и правовой базы для использования преимуществ природного газа в качестве низкоуглеродного топлива. Мы уверены, что более широкое использование газа на грузовых и легковых автомобилях будет способствовать достижению углеродной нейтральности в паневропейском регионе, а также повышению качества воздуха в городах. Я желаю участникам сегодняшнего семинара интересной, продуктивной дискуссии. Мы рассчитываем, что по итогам реализации этого проекта будут достигнуты конкретные результаты. Со своей стороны мы готовы продолжать оказывать все необходимое содействие. Благодарю вас.
Thank you, Mr. Alimov. Thank you so much for this. Now, our Deputy Executive Secretary, Acting Mr. Ilioski.
Morning. Dear Deputy Minister, dear Deputy Permanent Representative, other colleagues, friends. Just a few months ago, UNECE started to implement the new ECAs project, improving capacity of the UNECE member states to decarbonize the transport sector by increasing the use of the natural gas as a motor fuel funded by the Russian Federation. On behalf of the Executive Secretary, UNECE and its member states, I would like to once again to thank you to the Russian Federation for supporting this project from its voluntary contribution. Through such commitment, the Russian Federation recognized the synergies between the Committee on Sustainable Energy, the Inland Transport Committee, and the Committee of Environmental Policy. In this sense, I hope the project will be one of the many future initiatives that explore the nexus between energy, transport, environment, and development. The project's overreaching objective is to improve capacity of our member states to decarbonize transport by increasing the use of the natural gas. Decarbonization of transport or achieving carbon neutrality is not an end in itself. Rather, it is a means to achieving many environmental, economic, climate and social benefits. Some of those benefits will be explored in depth today. I will leave it to our distinguished panelists to build the case for the use of the gas in transport. From my perspective, perhaps the key notion is switching the natural gas away from petrol and diesel will improve urban air quality in many cities in the ECE region. Using natural gas instead of liquid fuels lowers concentration of nitrogen oxide, carbon monoxide, methane, sulfur dioxide, volatile organic components, and particulate matter that hence improve the urban air quality. Today's webinar demonstrates that UNECE can use it in convenient power to bring together, to introduce to each other various stakeholders. The next year, there will be more such events, both webinars and hopefully COVID permitting in person. They will expand the network on gas and transport professionals and the policymakers across our region, and particularly in the country that are primary beneficiary of this project. The country is Armenia, Azerbaijan, Belarus, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Bulgaria, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Moldova, North Macedonia, Romania, Serbia, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, and Uzbekistan. Welcome again, and I'm looking forward to the presentation and to engage, open, and interesting debate. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Ilioski. Thank you so much. Thank you to all three of you for this nice opening and setting the tone for the workshop. Now I think we are ready to move on with our program. As you know, the natural gas has a very important role to play in the overall context of the United Nations 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Not only the SDG 7, which is the goal dealing with sustainable energy, but also a range of other goals. Our principal partners in exploring those interactions between natural gas and various social, economic, and environmental components of the UN agenda has been the International Gas Union. Today with us, we have Luis Bertrand, the Secretary General of the International Gas Union, who will walk us through these important concepts of how natural gas fits into the UN overall agenda. So, Mr. Bertrand, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Branco. And I am very pleased to be today participating in this important webinar. I am Luis Bertrand from IGU Secretariat. The IGU has the headquarters now in Barcelona. It's a rotating secretariat. We are here since 2016, and next year we will move to London as a new office of IGU. We have an overview of what is happening in the gas contributions in every sector, and this is a special contribution to transport sector and allowing me to speak today among the distinguished other speakers. Next slide, please. Click again, yes. So here I would like to show with you that all of us are using transportation for taking all foods and goods together with us. Is for giving a size of what transport means in global energy consumptions. Is on the right of the slides is around 1/3. Even that is not the last year balance, but it's giving to you an idea of how transport sector is important on energy consumption, because around 1/3 of the total energy used by the world is destined to transportation. So very important sector, and with a not easy and clear pathway on how to deal with the Paris Agreement. Next slide, please. Here is a global picture, and if we don't know nothing, and based on the data that we had from 2018, we'll have an increase of emissions, mostly coming from the heavy haul sector. And that need to be compensated because accordingly with the Paris Agreement, we projected that we need to have around 20 million barrels per day in 2050. So that means that we need to look at these routes going down on the increasing and on the existing consumption in transportation. But that means that different technologies are offering options for doing that. But you can see that natural gas is inside of these pillars, inside of these boxes, and will be a clear contributor to the reduction. That is attainable and that is possible, and gas will play an important role in doing that, mainly in two sectors that I will highlight a continuation in the next slides. Please go to next slide. So thinking on heavy haul sectors, that's true that in vehicles we have different options, but when we are talking on trucks, we think that really fuels need to be cleaner than are today. We have here a picture saying that we have now around 24 million on NGV globally in the world, and we have the possibility to using gas to reduce the main polluters that we have. Important reduction, and here also the possibility of compensating the CO2 if we are using non-methane organic gases for fueling this natural gas. Next slide, please. Click again. So in the left you have also, we talk about trucks, but also in the marine sector we are using one of the more pollutant fuels, the heavy fuel oil. So here the gains switching this fuel to natural gas is very important and very great. So in the right you can see that the accumulated emission related to pollutants in the air, which is a picture coming from 2015 when Paris Agreement was signed, and you can see that what we have accumulated in our atmosphere is coming almost from other fuels. Gas is not producing almost a particulate matter, is not producing sulfur dioxide. So we can have a clear gain using natural gas for reducing pollutants. And also very important reduction in nitrogen oxides, and important reduction also in carbon dioxide using natural gas. And I will tell later to you how you can still reduce this footprint from natural gas used as a fuel. But important advantages that the natural gas has need to be taken in account. And I am very happy today to participate in this webinar, and thanks and congratulate the Russian initiative on this project, which will be showing how the contributions are possible on doing better in this sector. Next slide, please. So in marine transportation, in marine sector, you know that we have these ECAs as areas free of pollutants, which are currently in the North Sea and in Baltic area and also in North America. But these areas will be extended. So even has not been still decided, but probably next area will be Mediterranean. And that is at cost of, as I said, using a heavy fuel is really one of the more pollutant fuels that we can use. So even the Mediterranean is still not declared as an ECA area. We have also these marine organizations, international marine organizations targets for reducing pollutants, and the setting up of these targets for 2030 and 2050 are inviting all the shipbuilders to provide today solutions that can meet this target for 2030. Investments in shipping will take around 20-25 years. So what we will have in 2030 and likely in 2050 need to be done by now. Will we be working in the next years? Move on the next slide, please. A picture of what these goals on International Marine Organization means that we cannot meet the Paris Agreement goals without having a plan. And the IMO set up these targets for 2030 on reducing more than 40% the CO2 emissions by 2030 and around 70% in 2050. So that means that to make that possible, different technologies can also compete, but gas is now available for being the fuel, the choice of the fuel for a new builder shipping that will be crossing the seas in the coming years. Next slide, please. Even different technologies is demonstrated that LNG is nowadays available competitively and widely available fuel around the world for reducing LNG, for reducing marine transportation emissions and improving the air quality in these areas. It's commercially viable and is scalable. We can move from a smaller scale to bigger ships and could be provided in different harbors around the world. Next slide, please. And the infrastructure which is needed with that is growing and growing. Europe is taking the leadership of this growth, but nowadays there is so much initiatives around the world, mostly in Asia, where marine transport is a key for moving goods and foods around the world, for developing this technology, of developing this infrastructure which is needed. Next slide, please. Here we have the picture where that's true that Europe is still ahead on the LNG bunker offer and infrastructure, but as said, other parts of the world are growing now very quickly. And the LNG total fleet in a smaller scale is growing and growing a kind of exponentially. So it's a good expectation that the shipbuilders that need to take decisions now can choose natural gas, liquefied natural gas, as one of the best solutions for the marine transportation decarbonization. Next slide, please. Here you can see also an example from Norway on the bunkering and how the country has been developing more and more facilities for reducing the impact on CO2 and in other pollutants. I will not go to all the details, but you can see on the right side that the projects for the next years on the smaller scale LNG vessels is still growing and growing. Next slide, please. Here I have a very good news to tell to all of you. The LNG, the natural gas, can be not only as we have natural resource, we can have also renewable resources. Here we have synthetic methane, liquefied synthetic methane, and biomethane. Both can be obtained, and the technology are now being developed, and that could be replacing the normal LNG that we are using today. That makes our pathway to the future decarbonizations scalable, available, and with the capacity to modulate the change and the use of biomethane or synthetic methane that could be replacing the normal natural gas. Here you have in synthesis the idea of using biomethane produced by the waste of different organic sources, which is creating also circular economies in the places that where is developed. And on the left, you have the synthetic methane, which is using renewables sources from solar and wind power to create the hydroxys, and using also CO2 create the synthetic methane. So we have the path, we have the technologies that can be continuing decarbonizing this fuel in the future to make available the goals that we have for 2050. Next slide, please. And here we have also an idea on the supply of this synthetic methane and biomethane. So we can fully support and fully fuel the transportation sector by the synthetic and biogas sources. And when we need for the other sectors also to be using more natural gas with not organic, with not an organic source, but need to be renewable, we have still a capacity for deploying another technology which is arriving nowadays to all the places, which is capture and storage of the CO2 and uses. So CCS and CCUS will be allowing natural gas industry to continue decarbonizing the industry after putting the biomethane and synthetic methane on the road. So that means that we have a path for having natural gas not only as an enabler of the energy transitions, but also a facilitator of the final destination of our targets. Next slide, please. Well, I will skip that. If you like to know a little more about what ISU is thinking and proposing and presenting on LNG activities for marine transportation sector, you can get by free on the ISU webpage this report. And next slide, please. I would like to show that this special slide here, different technologies could be competing. Let me know that for better understanding the slides, the goal is in the bottom. So I know it's a little strange, but here you need to see the graph, thinking that the goal is on the bottom as a zero emission shipping. So we have different technologies that could be competing, as you can see. We can have also using current fuels with scrubbers and for reducing sulfurs, etc. But it's costly and is still not hitting the options. We have also the possibility to electrification, but for talking about heavy fleets and heavy carriers, the weight of the batteries are making that not possible for long distance because of the intensity of the energy that need to be carried on the shipping for crossing long distances. Also, we have also the option of hydrogen, and is even an incipient, and is also a competitor also LNG, because it's not far away of LNG. As you know, natural gas has also 4 atoms in the molecule for hydrogen, but it's a little still more dangerous and need a little more deployment of technology for making that competitive. So LNG is today the available technology for leading the marine transport sector. We have also other initiatives as ammonia, etc., but it's similar to hydrogen. The risk on using that is still heavy and need more deployment. So for ensuring that we can reach the goals for 2030 and 2050 with the investments that need to be done by the years coming, is natural gas is the available fuel for making these investments now, working during 25 or more years and making the goals for 2030 and 2050 available. That is our point of view, and you can reach more information in IGU webpage. Mr. Branco, that is my presentation to all of you, and thank you for your attention. The floor is yours again.
Thank you, Mr. Bertrand. It's very interesting, very illuminating. I think these lessons learned in marine transportation will be very applicable to the road transport. And there are a few questions for you if you would like to take some of them. One talks about, is from Mr. Indrebo. I'm reading the chat, and I encourage others also to use the chat to the extent possible to ask all of our speakers directly. The question is, as the shipping seems to growing, on road transportation, what is the interest from car manufacturers for NGV, for natural gas vehicles?
Well, it's again this because it's available today and is competitive in terms of price. Sometimes we are now thinking on how we will be recovering from the economic crisis that the pandemic is creating, and we have an available fuel, scalable and possible to use by today with environmental gains and economic gains from now. And now it's time for action on that.
Okay, thank you. And I have a question myself. We heard from you a lot about the lessons in the maritime transport. This project at the same time deals with the use of natural gas as a fuel in road transportation. However, there is an interesting field of potential action in the future. As you probably all know, UNECE has the Inland Transport Committee that has a mandate for inland waterways, rivers in other words, and canals that go, the rivers like the Rhine River or the Danube or other navigable rivers. And there are recently initiatives on using like LNG master plan by the European Commission to use more and more natural LNG and replace diesel and other fuels, especially because the inland waterways often go through highly populated areas like in Germany or in Austria and down the Danube. So what would be your comment? How could we collaborate and work within the maybe UNECE context on some maybe future project on using LNG in inland waterways? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ranko. Really, it's very interesting. So I think that now what we said about the scale is very important. So now we can have LNG in a smaller scale. Even in harbors or etc., we can more talk about bunkering. But the smaller scale is really very flexible technology. You can put a smaller scale tanks in boats and little vessels for a waterway. So it's really very, very flexible, and I am sure that has the capacity for really converting the boats and vessels on the waterways for using also this LNG and being a big solution. In addition, in this case also, you have also don't need to build a new ship totally. You can also re-update a ship putting LNG tanks on the current vessels. I know that we are mostly in Europe talking, but let me highlight that we have also now that an important project in South America, which is the river coming from Bolivia to Argentina, which is also a river way, which a lot of traffic. And they also are managing a project for putting LNG on this waterway. is incredible that they are also trying to do the same, because this way is also using a lot of heavy transportation, and that will be probably seen the project financed by BID for making this transport on river transportation, also fueled by natural gas, liquefied natural gas. So you are not only the UNECE that we are thinking on putting LNG on the waterways.
This is certainly worth exploring. I believe that Ms. Baroni, Maria Rosa Baroni, has a question for you. Maria Rosa, maybe you can try to speak.
Okay, okay, Mr. Bertram, nice to see you, and I agree in everything you said. As a matter of fact, Italy represents almost all the technologies you have talked about, and also we have now Mr. Andrea Steger with you, so Italy, it's really on the goal for gas. But talking about LNG that we push very much, and Italy, we have more than 3,000 trucks, and every year it's growing up in station. We need incentives because LNG trucks, of course, are more expensive than diesel because of the cryogenic tanks and so on. And unless the fleet owner has some revenue, some incentive, it's very difficult to convince them to switch to LNG. In Italy, we have 20,000 euros for incentive for trucks, LNG. In Germany, they have free tools, but we have to do something general. We have to push states and countries to give some incentive, some help. Otherwise, it will be very, very difficult because of the cost. And fleet owner, they look at cost. Their kilometers are very expensive. So can you help us to do something together?
Well, I will try, of course, but let me say what is our position on this way. So what we are asking and advising almost the policymakers that need to take the decisions is asking for the neutral technology.
Of course.
That means that if they are really ready to help the electrification or the other fields, what we are asking in the gas sector is that the same reduction that gas is providing need to receive the same incentive. They cannot decide by the law what will be the final solution at choice. They need to be flexible and providing the same help and the same subsidy to the technologies that are helping us to meet the goals. Well, so that is our public position, that we are asking every regulator or every authority to be thinking on being technologically neutral. And that will allow us to help the natural gas sector in transportation and receiving the similar support that other technologies can receive.
Well, thank you very much, because, you know, NGV Italy is really neutral. In my board, I have all the technologies, all the energies. I have ACH with electric, I have Iveco with LNG, I have SNAM that is also now with hydrogen. So we're really neutral, totally neutral. But for LNG, we really need help. I mean, I know you cannot decide to get laws, but you can help us to push to decision.
We will do in the places that we are having the opportunity to talk in G20, in United Nations. We are telling our advice and our recommendations on this way.
Yes.
And well, I know that we have this special program in blue corridors in Europe, but also we need to incentivize more the development of these corridors.
Of course, we are doing our best. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your questions, Maria.
Thank you, Mr. Bertrand. I think we have to move on for the sake of time.
Thank you,
so thank you. It was
pleasure.
very interesting, and we'll follow up on many interesting ideas that you told us. Now, from Russia with Love, we'll have Vasily Zinin, who works for he's executive director of the Natural Gas Vehicle Association of Russia. And Mr. Zinin will tell us a bit about infrastructure for compressed natural gas and for liquefied natural gas in Russia. Mr. Zinin.
Okay, Branko, thank you very much. Yeah, I will speak in Russian. I hope that we now will have everything okay with the interpretation to English. But anyway, if you will have any questions, I will be ready to answer in both languages. But now I will switch to Russian according to the majority of our audience.
Now it works.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Уважаемые коллеги, спасибо большое за возможность выступить. Я в своем коротком выступлении хотел бы подчеркнуть некоторые особенно важные, на наш взгляд, особенности того проекта, который в настоящее время Европейская экономическая комиссия ООН начинает в рамках данного мероприятия. Начинает в рамках данного мероприятия и подчеркнуть, почему этот проект особенно важен и полезен всем участникам этого процесса. Отдельно рассказав о потенциальной его будущей структуре и, в общем, основных моментах, которые необходимо в рамках этого проекта, на наш взгляд, осветить. The next slide, please. Уважаемые коллеги, во-первых, мы живем действительно в эпоху трансформации. Эта трансформация касается различных аспектов нашей жизни и энергетического сектора, про трансформацию которого мы в первую очередь публично разговариваем. И на самом деле трансформация многих социальных процессов, политических процессов. Если мы говорим о транспортном секторе, то, безусловно, здесь тоже активно уже идет процесс трансформации. Проблема только в том, что пока финальная картинка того, как транспортный сектор должен выглядеть в результате этой трансформации, она, к сожалению, пока не сложилась ни в экспертном сообществе, ни среди органов государственной власти. И когда мы, решая свои цели и задачи, начинаем моделировать возможные сценарии развития транспортного сектора на среднюю и долгосрочную перспективу, мы понимаем, что здесь действительно необходимо в основе этой трансформации необходимо придерживаться подходов устойчивого развития. Что это значит? Это значит, что не одними выбросами мы должны руководствоваться в принятии управленческих решений. То есть действительно, помимо важнейших экологических параметров, необходимо учитывать и вопросы, связанные со стоимостью транспортных услуг как таковых, и со себестоимостью транспорта и инфраструктуры соответствующие, вопросов безработицы, вопросов налогового бремени и общественного долга, который возникает в связи с этим. Также вопросов продолжительности жизни, качества жизни, которые находятся на стыке и, в общем-то, во многом тоже определяются теми видами транспорта и способами перевозки пассажиров и грузов, которые мы в итоге выберем в целевой модели нашего развития. The next slide, please. И если мы, с нашей позиции, как мы в России в том числе сейчас обсуждаем эти вещи и хотели бы продолжить эту интересную, глубокую дискуссию и на международном уровне, безусловно, мы предлагаем рассматривать метан как один из важнейших альтернативных видов топлива по 4 причинам. То есть здесь есть 4 важнейших аспекта, про которые я вкратце скажу. То есть, во-первых, это технологические предпосылки. То есть действительно технологии и производство, и использование и компримированного природного газа, и сжиженного природного газа, они в достаточной степени зрелые для того, чтобы быть тиражируемыми глобально на большие масштабы. Это во-первых. Во-вторых, те стандарты качества, те стандарты безопасности, которые уже выработаны в секторе природного газа для транспорта, они, это, безусловно, очень хорошие практики. И эти стандарты гораздо, так скажем, более детально проработаны и более строгие для эксплуатантов, чем стандарты, например, для транспорта дизельного или бензинового. И здесь в вопросах безопасности, разной безопасности, экологической, производственной, промышленной, эти стандарты действительно высокого уровня, на них можно ориентироваться глобально. Если мы говорим об экономических предпосылках, то здесь я бы отметил 2 аспекта ключевых. На макроэкономическом уровне, с точки зрения такого широкого взгляда, и компримированный природный газ, и сжиженный природный газ в большинстве стран мира сейчас дешевле, чем нефтяные виды топлива. И, как уже было отмечено сегодня спикерами, природный газ, метан действительно привлекателен как альтернатива с точки зрения цены, ценовой конъюнктуры. И это базируется на фундаментальных факторах, то есть это не краткосрочные какие-то выбросы, это весь процесс производства, логистики этого вида топлива позволяет говорить о том, что это долгосрочная устойчивая тенденция. С другой стороны, если мы говорим о микроэкономике, то необходимо помнить, что из-за особенностей физических, своих физических качеств, метан не может быть украден из машины, из автомобиля. И для некоторых стран это очень важный фактор, который, знаете, много объясняет по поводу того, почему, с одной стороны, метан крайне привлекателен для собственников бизнеса, а с другой стороны, почему так сложно в некоторых аспектах может проходить внедрение метановых технологий в реальной практике. Потому что действительно, вот это нецелевое использование топлива, оно просто уходит, исчезает как явление. Значит, третий аспект – это экология. Безусловно, о них сегодня и уже сказано много, и будет еще говориться, но что, на наш взгляд, очень важно отметить, что с экологической точки зрения это ведь не только выбросы СО2, не только та самая декарбонизация, про которую сегодня принято говорить, но это в первую очередь выбросы твердых частиц, о которых сегодня господин Бертран сказал, тот самый black carbon, выбросы углерода, частиц углерода, которые на себя абсорбируют все остальные вредные вещества, которые выбрасываются в процессе сгорания видов топлива различных, как альдегиды, бензопирен. В общем, это ровно те самые вещества, которые, попадая к нам во время дыхания в легкие, вызывают и онкологические заболевания, и другие заболевания легочные. Это действительно напрямую влияет на здоровье и качество жизни людей в городах. Это то, от чего страдают люди. И здесь, на наш взгляд, очень важно помнить о том, что экология не заканчивается выбросами СО2. Хотя и для выбросов СО2 метан крайне интересен как альтернатива. Еще один фактор в экологии – это вопрос разливов топлива, с которым периодически человечество сталкивается, особенно когда мы говорим про наши водные ресурсы. И так вот, при хранении и транспортировке природного газа такая проблематика, как разлив топлива с заражением и загрязнением огромных территорий, она просто исчезает. И это принципиально важно, и в том числе для развития новых территорий, об этом нужно помнить. И глобально это очень интересный аспект, который необходимо выделить. С последней точки зрения, опять же, и в первую очередь базируясь на российской практике, мы понимаем, что метан – это с социальной точки зрения очень интересное и правильное топливо. Если мы посмотрим на распространение метана по Земле, то метан – это можно сказать так, метан – это топливо тех, кто считает деньги. И в первую очередь, конечно, дать возможность людям экономить на топливе, тем людям, для которых нагрузка на их личный семейный бюджет или на корпоративный бюджет для предпринимателей, нагрузка, связанная с затратами на топливо, существенна. И дать им возможность эти затраты снижать, это, безусловно, очень важная социальная инициатива. The next slide, please. Если мы говорим о целях устойчивого развития до 2030 года, которые в рамках концепции ООН утверждены, к которым мировое сообщество движется, которые выделяют в качестве основных ориентиров для долгосрочного развития, то мы понимаем, что уже учитывая отмеченные выше параметры использования природного газа, как минимум 10 из этих целей, из этих 17 целей могут быть более легко достигнуты с использованием природного газа на транспорте. И, в общем-то, про каждую из этих целей и вклад потенциального природного газа в достижение цели можем подробно говорить. Наверное, каждый здесь квадратик разных цветов – это тема отдельного семинара и отдельного интересного обсуждения. Подробно сейчас не буду на этом останавливаться, но отдельно вот этот аспект достижения долгосрочных целей ООН хотел бы также акцентировать в своем выступлении. The next slide, please. Если мы говорим о модной и очень важной теме касательно декарбонизации разных сегментов, в частности декарбонизации транспорта, то здесь на этом слайде приведены цифры одного из исследований, которые сравнивают различные виды энергоресурсов, которые используются в транспортном секторе сейчас. И вы видите, что если сравнивать все составляющие, учитывая при этом сравнении, то природный газ с точки зрения декарбонизации зачастую более привлекателен не только нефтяных видов топлива, но и электричество, да, для электрических автомобилей, использующих батареи, да, battery electric vehicles. Для электричества ключевым вопросом в оценке выбросов СО2, как мы с вами все понимаем, является так называемый power mix, да, то есть тот коктейль разных энергоресурсов, которые используют страны при генерации электроэнергии. И здесь действительно очень много зависит от доли угля в структуре энергетического сектора, от доли нефтяных видов топлива в структуре энергетического сектора. И насколько действительно зеленым является сектор электроэнергетики. В общем, это является базовым фактором, который влияет на целевые показатели декарбонизации. И, в общем, ни для кого не секрет, что проводились исследования, которые то самое моделирование сценариев развития транспортного сектора при массовом переводе на электрические виды транспорта, да, в некоторых городах тот самый углеродный след только увеличивается. Все еще раз говорит о том, что при вот этом моделировании, при формировании целевой модели, целевой картинки, как должен выглядеть транспортный сектор в будущем, каким мы хотим его видеть, необходимо учитывать, конечно, все факторы и комплексно подходить к расчетам и исследованию этого вопроса. The next slide, please. Помимо углеродного следа, также в нашей практике еще рассматривали и токсический, так называемый след, который не только СО2 учитывает, но и все другие вредные выбросы. Да. Здесь разница более чем в 7 раз между в данном случае компримированным природным газом и нефтяными видами топлива. The next slide, please. Значит, если говорить о уже существующем рынке природного газа, то здесь уже и Антон Юрьевич Ньютсон, и господин Бертран уже отмечали в общем, существующую структуру глобального рынка, так и перспективы. По самым консервативным оценкам к 1935 году перспектива потребления природного газа на транспорте от 150 миллиардов кубометров. Здесь, помимо вот этих цифр, про которые уже говорили, просто отдельно хотел бы обратить ваше внимание на структуру географическую рынка. И мы понимаем, что если сегодня мы говорим про рынок природного газа, то это наиболее динамично, во-первых, развивающиеся страны Азиатско-Тихоокеанского региона, а также особо интересно внимание к природному газу в странах Латинской Америки. И здесь действительно можно говорить уже о сложившемся рынке, и очень многие страны мира уже используют природный газ как фактор ускоренного развития для транспортного сектора, собственно, повышения конкурентоспособности своей экономики. Вот мы надеемся, что в рамках того проекта, который сегодня Европейская экономическая комиссия начинает, и для стран, которые входят в периметр Европейской экономической комиссии, тоже, так скажем, расширятся возможности, да, и по использованию природного газа в качестве топлива. Я надеюсь, что это будет полезно, найдет свое практическое применение в самое ближайшее время. The next slide, please. Если говорить про конкретно то исследование, тот проект, который сейчас начинается в рамках Европейской экономической комиссии, то основной его целью, насколько мы понимаем, да, является содействие развитию рынков газомоторного топлива стран, которые входят в периметр Европейской экономической комиссии. Конкретно в рамках этого проекта необходимо, безусловно, аккумулировать лучшие практики, которые сегодня уже на глобальном рынке представлены. Необходимо проанализировать специфику тех стран, которые сейчас в периметре этого проекта будут рассмотрены, и отдельно мы настаиваем на комплексном этом подходе, базирующемся на принципах устойчивого развития. Необходимо оценить различные эффекты использования природного газа. И экологические, социальные, экономические. Тут действительно есть возможности комплексно взглянуть на перспективы. И, значит, по срокам вот этого проекта, я так понимаю, что какие-то ближайшие результаты уже в марте будут представлены в рамках реализации проекта. The next slide, please. Если говорить о охвате того исследования, которое сейчас инициируется, то это страны Юго-Восточной Европы и бывшие страны СНГ. Бывшие страны Советского Союза, нынешние страны СНГ. Армения, Азербайджан, Белоруссия, Босния и Герцеговина, Болгария, Казахстан, Кыргызстан, Молдова, Северная Македония, Румыния, Сербия, Таджикистан, Туркменистан и Узбекистан. Вот на карте вы видите, на слайде эти страны выделены синим. Ну, что про них можно сказать в целом, как объекте исследований и как в объекте потенциального внедрения тематики использования природного газа на транспорте? Ну, с одной стороны, все эти страны заинтересованы в том, чтобы, безусловно, как мы понимаем, да, заинтересованы в том, чтобы найти новые инструменты ускоренного устойчивого развития. Большинство этих стран имеют доступ к природному газу. И действительно, мы можем говорить о том, что это исследование, эта инициатива для стран этого списка носит не умозрительный характер, а предельно практическую направленность. Очень важно отметить, что некоторые страны из представленного списка уже имеют достаточно развитый рынок, сложившийся рынок газомоторного топлива. The next slide, please. Если мы попробуем структурировать представленные страны по стадиям развития рынка, да, стадиям жизни вот этого рынка газомоторного топлива, то в качестве наиболее развитых могли бы выделить Армению и Узбекистан. Это те страны, которые уже имеют богатый опыт развития рынка газомоторного топлива, и уже, так скажем, они с этим живут какое-то время, да, то есть уже появились эффекты долгосрочные от этого перевода, они уже имеют практики регулирования существующего рынка, то есть действительно здесь есть на что посмотреть и про что поговорить с точки зрения практических аспектов и государственного комплексного подхода к этому вопросу. Уверенный рост сейчас демонстрируют такие страны, как Белоруссия и Болгария. По Республике Беларусь действительно, вообще отдельно там можно говорить о тех темпах, которые страна набрала в последнее время в части темпов роста газозаправочной инфраструктуры. Если говорить о остальных странах, то их можно распределить по группе, так скажем, начального роста. Это те страны, где только несколько заправок, так скажем, есть определенный опыт, некоторые пилотные проекты уже были реализованы, но пока дальше дело не зашло, и наверняка требуется некий комплексный взгляд как раз, да, с лучшими практиками государственного регулирования, государственного стимулирования, с оценкой эффектов, да, для того, чтобы эти страны двинулись дальше, для того, чтобы понять, что нужно сделать, чтобы подтолкнуть рынок к более динамичному развитию. И есть страны, которые находятся на этапе раннего роста, которые уже делают активные первые шаги для того, чтобы сформировать базовую и, с одной стороны, базовую инфраструктуру заправочную, с другой стороны, некий фундаментальный базовый парк транспортных средств на природном газе. Здесь Казахстан, Молдова и Сербия, в общем, уже делают уверенные шаги на этом пути. И также я думаю, что в задачи проекта должно входить выделение тех мер, которые помогут поддержать страны на вот этом выбранном ими направлении развития. The next slide, please. Мы понимаем, что в рамках исследования нужно, на наш взгляд, не только посмотреть на сложившуюся практику, не только посчитать количество заправок и транспорта, но и выделить некоторые качественные вещи. Да. Во-первых, необходимо лучшие и худшие практики выделить и среди стран, и глобально, с точки зрения глобального опыта использования природного газа на транспорте. В качестве отдельной точки внимания, безусловно, должны быть требования нормативного и технического регулирования, особенно к объектам заправочной инфраструктуры. Разные страны смотрят на это по-разному. В странах СНГ своя структура регулирования, да, регуляторная. В странах Европейского Союза другая. И здесь действительно необходимо посмотреть, какие ограничения с точки зрения законодательства мы имеем для развития заправочной инфраструктуры. Если мы в целом говорим о международной практике, то, наверное, я думаю, что коллеги, присутствующие со мной, согласятся, можно утверждать, что требование регулирования является одним из важнейших факторов, которые либо ограничивают, либо, наоборот, стимулируют развитие рынка газомоторного топлива. Поэтому на этот аспект, на наш взгляд, необходимо посмотреть особо внимательно. Важнейшим вопросом являются кейсы по популяризации, потому что, к сожалению, до сих пор, несмотря на те объемы рынка, про которые мы сегодня говорим, автомобили, и не только автомобили, разные виды транспорта на природном газе, на метане, остаются менее популярными, менее известными по сравнению, допустим, с теми же электромобилями, как альтернативы для конечного потребителя. И здесь, ну, это проблема нашей с вами повседневной работы, проблема всего сообщества, проблема органов государственной власти и международных организаций с точки зрения донесения просто хотя бы базового информирования конечных потребителей о возможностях, которые у них есть, там, с точки зрения экономии, с точки зрения ну, действительно, это изменение качества городской среды, да, в которой люди живут, качество жизни. Здесь действительно стоит только поаплодировать сегменту электротранспорта по качеству той популяризации, того продвижения, пиара, да, которые есть в них. И действительно здесь газовому сообществу тоже необходимо активно работать. Вот в части исследований мы считаем, что надо эти лучшие практики аккумулировать, также собрать и подсветить. Для всех стран, и, конечно, ну, отдельно исследования по комплексным экологическим параметрам использования различных видов топлива с сравнением для всего цикла и производства, и использования различных видов топлива. Также это необходимо отдельно высвечивать и доносить до участников проекта. The next slide, please. И если подводить итоги, я хотел бы завершить свое выступление короткое неким таким методологическим слайдом. Он может быть немножко сложен для восприятия с первого взгляда, но на самом деле является достаточно наглядным. Это круговая диаграмма, которая отображает различные сегменты транспортного сектора и целевой вид топлива, который с экономической, экологической, технической точки зрения наиболее интересен, да, для различных видов транспорта. Это и LNG, да, сжиженный природный газ, CNG, компримированный природный газ. Мы видим, что внешняя значит, оболочка вот этой круговой диаграммы – это тип инфраструктурного развития, который нам необходимо выбрать для того, чтобы обеспечить базовую возможность для заправки для большинства участников рынка. И я буквально 3 слова про это скажу, потому что, на мой взгляд, такой подход можно использовать в рамках заявленного проекта для того, чтобы подходить к комплексному анализу рынка газомоторного топлива в странах Евразийской экономической комиссии. Если мы говорим о транспорте, который эксплуатируется внутри городов, то, ну, например, автобусы, индивидуальный легковой транспорт, легкий коммерческий транспорт, такси, каршеринг и прочее, мы понимаем, что характеризует, да, данный транспорт. Ограниченные логистические маршруты и, в принципе, можно также сказать, что невысокий тоннаж перевозимых грузов. Для таких видов, для такого типа операционной активности приоритетом является компримированный природный газ с точки зрения простоты перевода, простоты эксплуатации и так далее, и экономических параметров. И здесь базовым подходом к созданию инфраструктуры является сетевой подход, когда нам необходимо покрыть площадь города, некой городской агломерации, покрыть площадь сетью заправочных станций. Если мы говорим с вами, допустим, о магистральном транспорте, магистральном автомобильном транспорте в частности, то, конечно, здесь уже, как в том числе Мария Роза сегодня отмечала, здесь больше интересны технологии сжиженного природного газа, и это другой тип развития инфраструктуры, это строительство заправочных станций на трассах. Трассовый тип, то есть нам надо покрыть линии на карте, а не площади. Также есть еще третий тип под некоторые специальные виды транспорта, когда нам надо покрыть точки, как морские порты, как сельскохозяйственные угодья или карьеры для добычи полезных ископаемых, если мы говорим о карьерной технике. которая, кстати, является крайне привлекательным сегментом для перевода на использование сжиженного природного газа. Об этой схеме говорить можно очень долго. Мы с удовольствием в любом формате готовы это общение продолжить. Нам эта тема очень интересна. Мы призываем активных участников продолжать эту дискуссию и за пределами сегодняшнего мероприятия, да и в рамках похожих мероприятий, которые, мы надеемся, в рамках проекта будут и дальше организованы. Последнее, что хотел бы отметить, что в нашем понимании охват вот того проекта, про который мы сейчас говорим, это все-таки на первом этапе именно дорожный транспорт, то есть магистральный автодорожный транспорт и тот транспорт автомобильный, который используется на территории городов. Коллеги, спасибо большое за внимание. Я очень надеюсь, что я более-менее уложился в регламент и буду рад ответить на ваши вопросы.
Thank you, Mr. Zinin. Very informative, and thank you very much for giving us some information about the deliverables of this project. And I would like to encourage everybody to get in touch with Mr. Zinin, who is a consultant hired to help us deliver on many important deliverables of this project. Are there any questions for Mr. Zinin?
I have some questions. I sent you.
You can say it because I have not received, please.
Okay. Well, hi, Vasily. I hope you're fine. And I want to ask you, you know that the new GV Gazprom engine system is now operating in Russia. So we are ready to go ahead and try to do our best to methanize the Russian transportation according to our agreement and the need of Mr. Zhukov. So I would like to know what kind of project you have to push the methanization. We have done a lot in the last year, but right now in the future, what are you going to do?
Maria Rosa, thank you very much for your question. Dear colleagues, if you don't mind, I will answer in English. You know that what situation do we have now in Russia? We really have a great complex program for NGV market in Russia with a lot of support from the federal government and regional government as well. And now in this year, in 2020, it was a couple of documents really important for them that are really important for the market that were implemented. And the one of them is about retrofit systems and switching the current transport to CNG at first, if we talk about the retrofit technologies. And I think government increased the level of subsidies, and the Gazprom will add subsidies as well. So the final customer in Russia can switch from diesel or gasoline to natural gas for 10% of cost. So he will get 90% of subsidies after the switching. And the main problem on the market now is the practice of the regional governments. And now from the position of association, we try to involve all the Russian regions in this really complicated activity and really complicated dialogue about the best practices of the best regions and about all the measures that on the regional level we need to implement to make this system work. And Mr. Abramov will be the speaker from the Belgorod Oblast today. They have a great experience and all the best practices that I hope Mr. Abramov will share. So what I would like to mention is that now we are in the really complicated process of coordination of all the Russian regions activities, because the basic understanding on federal level is already implemented, and now we switch to the regional level and go to details how this the system should work in real life.
Okay, you know that according to our MOU, we are always ready to help you and to be on your side. Unfortunately, I cannot be there. Otherwise, I will be there to talk. And I saw Mr. UNECE, and well, we have to go back and continue what we have decided when you were in Italy last February of last year with Mr. Zukov and Mr. UNECE. We need federal laws. We need a general acceptance of the ECE 110, and that's what we need, 110 and 115. That's what we have to do. And you know that anything you need, well, unfortunately, we can only do by writing or by web, but we'll do it. And also for the safety of stations around the countries, you know that EC 110 and ISO are in NGV Italy hand. So I think you can come anytime as usual and we will help you. But we have to do something. Otherwise, the project will collapse.
Okay, Maria, thank you very much. I really appreciate your willing to help, and we will continue to ask you for your activities.
Well, I am one of the director of the new GV, so I needed the money. It's a personal feeling and needs. Okay, Vasily, thank you.
Thank you, Maria. As you are in the process, we have great opportunities to be successful.
Well, at the moment I have the vaccination, I'll come. That's for sure. Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Perroni. Thank you, Mr. Zinin. I think we have to move on. In one of your slides, you said something interesting. You showed some sort of emissions associated with production of various vehicles. And if I recall, you mentioned electric cars that are 40-something grams per kilogram, while natural gas vehicles about 24, about half of that. Which actually brings us to our next topic, which is life cycle analysis as a key way to approach decarbonization. Here we have with us Mr. Andrea Gerini from the Natural and Biogas Vehicle Association Europe, NGVA Europe, and he will walk us through the life cycle analysis and how we can actually tell what's the least carbon way, so to speak, to sustainable transportation. Mr. Gerini, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much, Branko, for the introduction, and of course for this invitation that is very timely because from the European angle, today is the day where the European Commission will release the communication about a smart and sustainable mobility strategy, where they will provide somehow the overall recipe how to decarbonize the transport system looking to 2030 and 2050. So we are eager to try and understand how and if technology neutrality will be implemented and respected. We can move to the next slide, please. Yeah, because when it comes to the transport sector, despite the progress in vehicle efficiency during this last decade, the increase of demand in energy consumption due to personal mobility to freight transport has counterbalanced this progress. And this is the only sector that is now diverging from the rest, and is the sector where the most efficient and cost-effective solution must be applied to try and curb this. This, of course, will come with a system approach, but we will see how things will move according to the different approach. And life cycle assessment is now becoming the key way to assess a solution because of the complexity, because we are putting together internal combustion engine technologies, fuel dimension, electric drive. So we need anyway to enlarge our perspective and to be able to assess in a fair way all the solutions. So we can move to the next slide, please, and have a very quick overview about the sources of emission when it comes to transport. This is taken from an interesting report from Frontier Economics, and is just showing where emissions are emitted and on which sector. So we know very well there is the manufacturing, the fuel production and distribution, so the infrastructure for distributing the fuel, the use of the fuel that we know very well, and of course the end of life. So all this is constituting the so-called cradle to grave assessment, where greenhouse gases are in, but also all the other pollutants. But today we are just having a look to CO2 and greenhouse gas emission, because this is the main focus nowadays when it comes, of course, to decarbonization. So next slide, please. Today, the car industry is dealing with the CO2 emission standard regulation. That is really the key driver for the technology's choice. And as you can see from this slide, out of all the emission sources, this regulation is focusing on the tailpipe emission, forcing somehow the car industry to find out the solution for compliance, lowering down tailpipe emissions. So, of course, electrified solutions are the easy winner. And this is the mainstream that we are seeing now in Europe, with industry forcing and being forced to develop and put on the market electrified solution. We are now approaching 2021 objective of 95, the famous 95 grams kilometer objective. The car industry is anyway far from this objective. We are speaking about at least a gap of more than 15 grams to be covered for last year. That translated into fine. This will translate into more than 10 billion euros fine for the car industry. So we are still far from having solved the problem of producing this kind of vehicle and also distributed on the market. So, but this is, let me say, the blind approach that today Europe is dealing with. If we move to the next slide, I think that this is an interesting exercise that has been made always from frontier economies in having a look to the potential that we think to have when we switch from conventional fuel to battery electric vehicle. You see here on the left, 124 gram CO2 is the average value in Germany for conventional fuel that theoretically could be completely cancelled. But then when you add all of the other components, looking to the production of electricity, the CO2 impact from adding the infrastructure to for the electricity grid transmission, and the impact of the vehicle production and end of life, you realize that out of these 124 grams, in reality, you save 7 grams. So the real impact of a very huge electrification of the park is not leading to the expected result that we could see just looking to the tailpipe emission, but it's very poor. So we need to multiply solution. And if we move to the next slide, we see which is the situation when we compare a C-segment vehicle, let me say a Volkswagen Golf, just to understand, over a lifetime of 160,000 kilometers. And we compare the emission from petrol with CNG. We look to also the perspective that we are also developing in Europe, looking to the bio CNG. And we compare also with the today battery electric vehicle, what a battery electric vehicle could be in 2030, according to the different energy mix. So the blue part translates the weight of the manufacturing process. And here is the main issue today from battery electric vehicles. Today, battery electric vehicles emit the double of CO2 emission due to the manufacturing process of batteries. And this is quite crazy to see that in the large sedan or big SUV, we are speaking about 100 kilowatt-hour batteries that just for their manufacturing are emitting approximately 9 tons of CO2 just before starting using this vehicle. So here is the question to see which is the impact, of course, of just looking to the system from a tailpipe approach rather than from a more complete and overarching assessment. If we move on the next slide, we will see the overall result in terms of the so-called cradle-to-grave emission. And we realize that, of course, CNG is already providing a step into the right direction. And then with the CNG blended progressively with the bio, we are in measure to provide the same kind of result as a battery electric vehicle at a lower cost, providing a better range of the vehicle. So better replying to the expectation also of the end user, because we have to consider the expectation of the end user. So it's not question to say battery electric vehicle is bad and the rest is good. Is to really have the clever approach and the right approach to put the right solution at the right place. Because if we move on the other slide, there is an interesting view also when we look over the time about this cradle-to-grave emission. And when we compare and we see at the starting point for a battery electric vehicle, here represented by the green line, we realize that this emission that we mentioned before, the double compared to a conventional vehicle, whatever petrol or CNG. And we see that also plug-in electric vehicles that today are also very smart, let me say, a solution to lower down the tailpipe emission for here in Europe. They anyway also have a strong impact coming from the manufacturing size because of the size of the battery. And we realize that anyway, a battery electric vehicle starts to be interesting. So to provide a benefit to the environment under the greenhouse gas emission perspective, just after 75,000 kilometers compared with the CNG vehicle. The CNG, not a bio-CNG vehicle. So even comparing, let me say, with the fossil CNG, we have anyway still to wait approximately 80,000 kilometers before starting seeing a benefit coming from a battery electric vehicle. So this is the reality. So, and we have to pay a lot of attention on which will be the evolution also of the industry in getting more sustainable battery manufacturing process, taking care, of course, also of the end of life of the battery. Because today we have anyway to remind that 95% of the vehicles that are manufactured are recycled, except of the batteries. So we are starting from this unfortunate position. So this is the situation when we open from a pure tailpipe approach to a life cycle assessment. So for this reason, it's important that the future regulation assessing the different technologies will anyway have this LCA, life cycle assessment thinking, in order to be able to have this clear and fair assessment among different solutions. I will just conclude with the last slide, because I want to mention that natural gas as an ecosystem, of course, is still relying on mature technologies, but that are anyway still open to further improvement in terms of efficiency, in terms of potential to be combined with also hybrid powertrain technologies. This is very important. And apart from all the added value coming from the conversion of bio-waste product, it's also interesting to have a look to the flexibility of the system with regard to the possibility to blend also hydrogen. So internal combustion engine and the refueling infrastructure can be also adapted to partly include hydrogen. That can be part also of the solution. We know very well, we had already some nice experiment looking to blend containing up to 20–30% of hydrogen, so demonstrating technical feasibility. So this is also another axis for development, for exploration in the future, to try and accelerate and complete the performance coming from this very interesting ecosystem. Thank you very much, and happy to take your question.
Thank you, Mr. Gerini. I think this was quite interesting. You brought some important concepts. So let me ask, first of all, participants, any questions for Mr. Gerini? If not, I have actually one question. When we started this project a year ago, we actually put in the project some construction we call well-to-wheel, from production to driving. And thanks to your intervention, I believe, and others were also involved, we've changed this to life cycle analysis. And I know that your presentation said most of it, but could you summarize for us, just for the sake of our participants, what's the key difference between the well-to-wheel and the life cycle analysis?
Yes, well-to-wheel is related to the utilization of the fuel, including also the production of the fuel and its distribution. So when it comes to natural gas, you look to the CO2 impact from extracting gas, processing, and distributing gas up to the station, including also the compression of the gas up to 200 bars, or in the case of LNG, the liquefaction process and distribution. And of course, you add this to the CO2 emitted from the vehicle. The cradle to grave add to the well-to-wheel dimension also the manufacturing of the vehicle, can also include the manufacturing of the infrastructure needed to distribute the fuel or the energy carrier, and the end of life. So that's to say the energy translated into CO2 emission needed to recycle materials at the end when the vehicle will be dismissed.
So life cycle analysis and cradle to grave are synonyms?
Yeah, see, exactly.
Okay, thank you for clarification. So thank you all for your attention. Let's make a short 15-minute break, and we hope to see you all at 12 noon sharp here again. Thank you. So good morning or good afternoon, everybody. We have about 1 minute to 12 noon here in Geneva, and we are ready to start the second part of our webinar. We will start with what was supposed to happen just before the break, the presentation by Mr. Walter Nissler from our Sustainable Transport Division on our work on natural gas vehicles and safety standards for them. I went through a few slides, but I'm sure Mr. Nissler will do it in greater detail and much more interesting. So I think we are ready to start as soon as the slides are on screen in less than a minute now. Nadezhda, please put Mr. Nissler's slides back again. You can start from first slide.
Okay.
So welcome back, everybody. Mr. Nissler, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, and thank you for inviting me to this important meeting. And please apologize for my late arrival, but I was in parallel in another meeting where I was a member of a panel and had to interfere there. So let me now go to my agenda and to my presentation. And if you go to the next slide, it is providing a brief overview of what the World Forum for Harmonization of Vehicle Regulations is doing. I am sure my colleague has introduced more or less what is on the slide. In addition, our vehicle regulations have a global coverage, even if the map does not show, which shows the contracting parties, has some, let's say, gray areas, but many countries are applying our United Nations vehicle regulations on a unilateral approach without being a contracting party. So in principle, vehicles produced around the globe are following this United Nations regulatory framework for vehicles. There are also these nice 6 images on the different areas of our work. These are represented in 6 working parties dealing with the different subjects. We have also established under these or subsidiary to these working parties expert groups that are named informal working groups or task forces, and we have around 40 of them running in parallel. That ends up with a network of some 4,600 experts that are contributing to the establishment of our regulations. Next slide, please. 2 main elements related to vehicles powered by natural gas are the 2 agreements that currently cover this area. There is the 1958 agreement on type approval of vehicles, where each approved part has also benefiting of bearing an unique marking. And with this approval number and the approval date and the test report, it's very easy to identify the part, whether it is complying with these United Nations technical regulations. This is important because under this agreement we have the system of mutual recognition of type approvals. That means any country can easily identify whether the parts are approved and whether they fulfill the United Nations safety standard regulations on this. The other agreement is the 1997 agreement dealing with periodic technical inspection of vehicles, and there we recently have established a specific UN rule on the performance of the testing periodical inspection of vehicles with special focus on vehicles that are fueled by liquid natural gas and compressed natural gas. Thank you. Next slide, please. Yes, in this presentation, I focus mainly on the UN regulation number 110, so 110, as this is to be seen as the mother regulation on vehicles powered by natural gas. Of course, we also have regulation 115, maybe call it the sister or daughter regulation of this regulation related to the retrofit systems, which is then also linked to both elements on the components and on the installation in the individual vehicles. Now let's move on and first looking on the first part of the regulation that is dealing with the approval of the specific components. And you may already have been introduced on, let's say, the area of which of the requirements that these systems would have to meet. So we are dealing with pressures starting at the level of low pressure of 20 kilopascal up to 26 megapascal. That means a pressure of 260 bar in the at least storage system of these vehicles with compressed natural gas. We also have to deal with very low temperatures, which is then also important for the liquid natural gas. So we are dealing with temperatures below minus 40 degrees Celsius. Just as a background information on this short image, you see among most common public transport vehicle in India, so-called tuk-tuk, and India did an excellent step 2 years ago that all these tuk-tuks had to be retrofitted to run with liquid, with compressed natural gas. So this was a huge step. And if you look on the population of vehicles of India and specifically on the numbers of millions of tuk-tuks around, this switch to LNG was a huge step for the environment. Next slide, please. This is just listing up of the specific components that are subject to individual approval, and if you count them, it's easily ending up at 26 different specific components that are covered in this regulation for individual approval. The next slide, please. And therefore, all these parts will bear an individual approval mark, and with specific elements on it. For example, I just put the example on the operating temperatures, where we differentiate between moderate or cold temperatures, and this will be then easily identifiable in the approval mark. Very important is also for keeping the systems safe during the life cycle of their use is that, for example, elements such as flexible hoses bear also a manufacturing date on their covering, that those flexible hoses that have, let's say, shorter lifespan than other parts of the vehicle can be checked whether they are still compliant with the duration of their use. Of course, very critical elements are containers and tanks. Are the storage media that needs to have specific marking or type plate to be affixed to them, and also these containers and tanks need to be not only subject to a visual check during the periodic technical inspection, but also to be re-approved or with high regarding their pressure or their strength capacity, depending on their size, every 10 or every 15 years. Next slide, please. So there are, of course, different materials that can be used for these tanks that you may find in the vehicles. So we have starting from metal based tanks, as you can see in the image of the truck, up to, let's say, composite materials or wrapped materials, as you can see in the tank of the passenger car on the left image. Again, a lot of information is to be put on this approval plates of and identification plates of the tanks. Next slide, just very brief, and I don't want to go into detail. The regulation covers an extensive amount of test procedures and test requirements, and there are the different matrix for the different products, which tests they have to comply with. And you can see that, for example, some of the requirements, the burst tests can go up to 73 megapascal. That means 730 bar pressure that these tanks would need to cope with. And also looking on the temperature side, operating temperature are going down to minus 162 degrees Celsius. So there is a huge variation of tests that are specified within the regulation. Next slide, please. So for the installation, there are some basic but very important requirements that these CNG or LNG systems of vehicles shall function in a good and safe manner at the working pressure and operation temperatures for which it has been designed and approved. And now it also is made clear why all the different components need individual approval, because one of the installation requirements is that all components of the system shall be type approved as individual parts or multifunctional parts. And of course, there are then requirements on the test of the installed system. And one important element is that these vehicles that have been equipped with CNG or LNG systems have the related labeling, which is very important in case if the vehicle is then involved in a crash, that then first rescue services know that there is some additional danger, possible danger coming from these vehicles. Next slide, please. The regulation also identifies the minimum parts that have to be part of an installed CNG or LNG system, and optional parts that may be also included depending on the individual system. I just wanted to put some images that you can see that from the vehicle manufacturers, these vehicles that are designed for CNG or LNG powered, there all the components are already embedded in the vehicle when it is in its design phase, and then they are very well installed and protected for the cases of crash situations. Of course, you may find also some kinds that are called CNG kits for retrofitting. These are popping up on the internet. If you're looking for this, these are possible basic kits for the retrofitting of the CNG systems. However, this retrofit is something that should be done by qualified workplaces, and it is not something that can be done in a do-it-yourself manner. And if you are traveling around in several countries, sometimes you assume that there is more do-it-yourself than proper installation by professionals. Next slide, please. So there you can see just for the installation of containers or tanks, so the storage media for the compressed natural gas, that they should be designed that they are able to withstand an force comparable to an acceleration of 20 G. That means 20 times the weight of the storage media in the direction of travel, and with 8G is also related for the strengths in the perpendicular side of the direction of travel. Just as some highlights that this is something that ends up to have these systems installed in vehicles in a very safe manner. Of course, there would be much more elements in the regulations that could be shown, and there is, I think, a list of more than 2.5 pages with references to private standards like ISO standards, where reference is made to within this regulation, and therefore making this private standards mandatory via this UN regulation. And with this, I will stop here, and not to go too much into technical detail, as it is, let's say, a very technical substance, just giving you a brief look into one of our UN regulations dealing with the subject. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nisler. Very, very interesting. Any questions for Mr. Nisler? If not, I have one.
Да, можно вопрос?
Да, конечно, да.
Один вопрос. Талгат Арыстанбаев. Меня слышно, да?
Господин Арыстамбаев, говорите, пожалуйста, да, вас слышно.
Да. Я хотел бы поблагодарить господина Вальтера Нислера за его презентацию, и вопрос такой. Вот в странах Евросоюза существует ли какой-либо унифицированный документ, разрешающий заправку газобаллонных автомобилей на газоправочной станции иностранного автомобиля? Пояснить хочу то, что сейчас, скажем, у нас в Казахстане, да и во всех странах, заправка автомобиля, не прошедшего освидетельствования испытаний баллонов, запрещена. Допустим, но иностранный автомобиль, привезя в страну, должен тоже показывать какой документ. Как вот эта проблематика решается в странах Европы?
Okay, thank you for this interesting question. First, UNECE is not the European Union. The European Union is part of UNECE, and the European Union is also a contracting party to the 1958 agreement. And being a contracting party to this agreement, the European Union has also mandated the United Nations Regulation 110 within their European legislation on the approval of vehicles. So in principle, vehicles that enter the European or that are circulating in the European Union should comply with the requirements of this regulation, and all the tanks and storage media should have been approved. Also, Russian Federation and a certain number of Central Asian countries are contracting parties to this agreement and are applying the UN regulation. Of course, if you border to, or if you have vehicles coming from countries that are not yet contracting parties to the agreements and have not implemented its regulations, there is, of course, a huge safety risk when it comes to the refueling if there is no knowledge on the installed tank in the vehicle, whether this has been ever certified or approved according to the international safety standards. Thank you.
In this purpose, may I add something about Italy? Because in Italy, we, of course, we have the largest fleet and the largest number of stations. And, but although we agree on all the 110 specification regulation for components, but we have a different way to test the cylinders, especially the type 4, and that's a problem. And we only recently, we agreed that we had the okay for self-service at the CNG stations. But in order to fill CNG during at self-service with not attended stations by person, people have to attend and do a short training tutorial that is done by SNAM and is on the website. So unfortunately, Italy is one of the countries that because our government and especially the fire brigades are very scared about possible problems and in accidents, we are really tough. Also because in Italy, there are countries coming with their cars from very old cars. And so that's a very, and as NGV Italy, we're always on first line to try to have a regulation that are the same as EC10. And that's what I do all the time. But unfortunately, we still have this difference. If you come to Italy, only recently we have the self-service, but in order to do it, you have to take a training at the tutorial. And also it's a problem for the Type 4 cylinder because they do not accept the 110. And so that's the problem. Just to say that it's not only India or other countries that do not accept totally the 110s.
So what's the pressure for Type 4?
Well, you see, they first of all, they wanted to do hydraulic tests.
Можно я свой вопрос поясню? Я владелец автомобиля на CNG, и я подъезжаю к заправке, а у меня требуют документ, скажем, в странах Евросоюза, будь то будет Италии, документ, подтверждающий, что я прошел освидетельствование. Это какой я должен документ показать там? Что у меня автомобиль технически исправном состоянии, газобаллонное оборудование. Требуется там такой документ или нет?
Well, in Italy, for example, you have to show that the testing, that you have done the testing of your cylinder, because that's the most dangerous part of it. So also the tutorial, if you go through the tutorial, the only thing they ask you is, have you done the regular test every 4 years?
Как я это буду доказывать? Какой документ?
That you have done testing, that your cylinder has been tested.
Понимаю. Теперь, скажем, я заезжаю в другую страну, там тоже будут такой же документ требовать? Этот документ одинаковый во всех странах? Есть какой-то унифицированный документ, чтобы я приехал в Италию, заехал в Германию, заправляюсь в Италии, заправляюсь в Германии, и везде у меня будет требовать документ какой-то. Он унифицированный, скажем, документ, или для каждой страны я отдельно должен буду доказывать, что я прошел испытания, что мой автомобиль технически исправен?
Well, they want to know that your system has been approved if when you install the system. If it's not an OEM car, then you have and only retrofit. You have to show that in the paper you have the equipment, that your car is on CNG, that has been tested, and mostly and most important is that you test every 4 years your cylinder, because everybody is afraid that filling your cylinder is leaking or the valve is not working, and then a big accident can happen. That's what they want you.
Госпожа Мария Росса, мы тоже этого боимся. Поэтому на наших заправках, если к нам заедет автомобиль из Китая, вот, а у него все в документе написано на китайском языке, как мы его идентифицируем? Понимаете, у нас в этом проблема. Какой-то должен быть один документ, позволяющий иностранным, унифицированный документ, позволяющий иностранным автомобилистам на CNG заезжать и спокойно заправляться. Потому что куча документов, им надо будет...
You're right. If you come with a Chinese document in Italy, they will not allow you to do the filling for sure. Not because it's Chinese, but because they cannot read Chinese. Huh?
Is there anything we can do about this?
Поэтому какой-то нужен унифицированный документ разработать, скажем, для всех владельцев газобаллонных автомобилей, чтобы он мог проехать и везде заправиться. Скажем, будь то в Казахстане, будь то в Италии, будь то в России. У нас в России один техрегламент. А, скажем, с китайцами другой, с Европой другой.
That's a good project that we have to work on, but it's a new project.
Yes, if I may jump in, as I mentioned, we have also this agreement on periodic technical inspection, where we have this specific part on the gas-fueled or gas-powered vehicles. There would be the opportunity, because we also define there an international inspection certificate. So we could have there an international harmonized inspection certificate defined with specific focus on CNG or LNG vehicles. This is something we can follow up, and as also as the whole topic of Regulation 110 and 115 are covered in a working party on general safety. This working party is chaired by Italy. So
yes, yes, I know. I know. It's a big responsibility. But
yes, so Maria Rosa, you are best placed to get in contact with the colleague in the Ministry of Transport. I think it's Mr. Antonio Erario. Maybe you know him.
Erario, we always come to Geneva with Mr. Erario. We're sitting
exactly,
at the table, of course. And this is a very interesting project, an international inspection certificate that unify all we do and give the filling stations the security that when they are doing filling, they are not running into problems. Because, for example, the filling station is responsible at the moment of any accident that happens. That's for security, and that's also for insurance. So that's why they need to know that what they do is safe and the inspection has been done. because in the past, Italy has so many cars. So in the past, we had accidents. Other countries are new in CNG, especially in Europe. So they don't have this background. But the background that Italy has, it's something that makes our people, our fire brigades and legislators very tough. So I think, Mr. Nissen, that's a new job that I will do with Erario to look for an international certificate that allow everybody to circulate safely. We'll do it. I'll keep you in touch. We will keep in touch, of course.
Okay, very good.
Спасибо.
Thank you all. Quite interesting discussion. So I think we identify some challenges for one who wants to drive a car from, say, Lisbon to Vladivostok. There'll be many issues along the way. And certainly United Nations Economic Commission for Europe is here to help with harmonizing regulations to the extent possible. Now we have to move on. Ms. Maria Rosa Baroni from NGVA Italia, the president of NGVA Italia, will tell us a bit about the use of natural gas of about small-scale LNG and biomethane, and how these gases can enable a sustainable transportation. Ms. Baroni, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Branko, for inviting me. It's very important. Everything I heard is extremely important to us because, as you know, Italy is the largest European country for the use of CNG, LNG, biomethane, hydromethane, whatever it's called, gas and natural gas. So go ahead with the slides, please. NGV Italy reflects everything. It has been said by the General Secretary of EGU, by Zinin, by all the, by Gerini. In Italy, we have knowledge and technology in natural gas upstream, midstream, we engine design. We were the first country to have an OEM production, and I'm very proud to be one of the first working with FC, at that time was Fiat, for the multipla on for natural power. And we have a very large retail station owners. We have technology for cryogenic technology, biomethane production. So Italy, it's leading country almost everywhere. And that's why Italy, it's also the reference to globally to countries who want to approach CNG and regulation. So we belong to NGV Global, we are in the board, NGV Europe. And so we are connecting with all the technology and the best practice for the implementation of the use of natural gas for transport. So as you know, and I don't want to spend time to explain, the Italian industry excellent and expertise for natural gas is recognized over the world. So next slide, please. So unfortunately, I cannot show a growing of cars on CNG for the last 2 years. We had a very large impulse when Fiat at the time was working hardly and tough with CNG cars. And then we had Volkswagen also and Seat. But lately, Fiat, our FCH, switched to other energies because of the CO2 regulation of the United Commissions. So this year, the natural gas passenger cars in Europe have only been 60, almost not even 70,000. Italy, of course, still covers 55% of the cars on CNG. LNG is growing very fast. We have, as I said, in Europe, we have about 4,500 LNG trucks, and almost 3,000 are Italian. And there is a big growing also because, as I mentioned before, our government is giving an incentive of 20,000 euros for LNG trucks. And that's something that NGV Italy achieved in the last few years. So this is very important for fleet owner that have to look most of the time to cost, kilometer cost. One thing very important is that we see that the LNG on heavy duty is mainly used by food companies. We have Barilla, we have water, mineral water, San Gemini, we have all kinds of food company business that prefer to use LNG in order to show also at the level of publicity that not only they make very clean food and very good food for the people, but they also use a very clean way of transportation. So we have, as you see, 2,000 in Europe, 2,000 trucks, and about 2,000 coaches. And most of them, of course, are in Italy. Of course, what we are working now is to have incentive also for light vehicles. And only just the other week, I asked the government an incentive for retrofit, because we think that cars, Euro 3, Euro 4, needed to be cleaned up, as we say. And most of the owners of this type of cars cannot allow at the moment to switch to clean cars with new energy. Absolutely not to electrical cars, and also to new Euro 6 or even Euro 7 cars. Too expensive for the moment, especially with the pandemic that makes the people extremely careful in expenses. So I think that for CNG, we need to start again what Italy has done in the last 50 years to push and try to support the retrofit. The retrofit is going to give the new life to CNG for also for a filling station and so. So next slide, please. Next slide. So we see the CNG and LNG station. Well, they keep growing, of course, both CNG station recently in the last 2 years, SNAM, that everybody knows, like the most important European and also global infrastructure companies, as a project to open more than 200 new filling stations. This is to cover that part of Italy that has not been covered yet by CNG filling station. And you know the story of chicken and eggs, where there is no station, there are no cars, where there are no cars, there are no stations. So SNAM will fill up that gap. And that's why I have as a main target at the moment to grow the retrofit in Italy to supply that leak of cars coming from OEM. LNG stations are growing every day. In Italy, we have 58 or 59 LNG stations, plus other LNG stations private that are open within the fleet owner place. And I think that in a very, very short future, we will reach this year 100 of LNG stations. Of course, with the LNG station, we also have bio LNG stations. And just 2 weeks ago, in Iveco, new as way has been filled up totally with biomethane. And that has been a very big achievement. Of course, we are also looking to a mix of CNG and bio-CNG to clean up. We know that 30% bio makes 30% less CO2. So that's we are doing a very large project to give to the grid as much as biomethane as possible. Next slide, please. Well, Italy, as I say, have all the technologies for natural gas. We have small-scale LNG. We think that LNG is the transition for decarbonization. So we use this word, transaction, and bridge to the future technology. We don't know what's going to happen. Maybe will be hydrogen electric. I doubt electric for heavy duty and boats, and but hydrogen is coming over. So we are looking forward to comply and to make people understand, that stakeholders understand that natural gas is the best transaction possibility for decarbonization. It's ready, we have all the technology, it's cheaper, and absolutely it's a technology that can stand all the fuel like diesel or other fuels or gasoline. So let's go. We have a micro liquefaction plant. We have gas pipeline all over. Right now, we are going to reach also Sardinia. Sardinia, it's the only place in Italy that had not CNG. So now with LNG, we are going to open a good grid of pipeline in Sardinia to cover. And we want to be the hub in the Mediterranean for LNG, LNG for boat, LNG for ship. Next slide, please. Well, the benefits, we all know the benefits, so I think we should go to the next slides. Well, these are the storage facilities of a small-scale LNG that we are developing in Italy. And that is mainly to show that we want to be really the hub for maritime. And we are working very hard to have projects mainly for fishermen boats and yachts and passengers, like we call it traghetto. I am Milanese and Venetian, and my dream is to see the Vaporetto in Venice to go on CNG or LNG or bio-LNG. It's a tough job, but I'm working on that very hard. So I think that our stakeholders are working very hard to reach this point. Next stop, thank you. So now we see the LNG uses the potential. The mainly potential for LNG, it's the heavy duty trucks, of course. The LNG consumption in 2010 has been 60 kilotons per year, and with a growth of plus 100%. The expected demand is going to 800 by 2030. We show the potential. Okay, now, okay, also the maritime transport is growing very much. And Italy had the first boat by biomethane and bio-LNG. We have LNG for residential and industrial use. And we're working also on that to have a growth. Thank you very much. Next stop. Here we see the Costa Smeralda and the first LNG refueling on a cruise ship in the port of La Spezia. So you see Italy is leading also this part. We are looking to the north where the cruise, many cruises are working on LNG, and our Costa Smeralda and our company SPCM are really going to switch very soon to LNG refueling, and when possible to biomethane LNG, or at least a mix of LNG and CNG methane and biomethane. So welcome to the Costa Smeralda. You can have a cruise very clean. Okay, it's also a beautiful boat. Next slides. You see the other uses of natural gas, of LNG, and that's what we are mainly working, because NGV Italy has not yet the technology for big ships, but we have the technology for this kind of boats or this kind of ships. And we are already working in countries to switch also from, to have dual fuel, that means diesel CNG or diesel LNG, or changing the engine into Cyclo 8, totally all LNG. So I think that we can have a very, very good success in ferries and in the shipping, in fishing boats, where the user can also save money, not only and to help the climate and the decarbonization, and most probably to get incentive for the different governments. So also in this project, Italy wants to be the hub of the Mediterranean. Thank you. Next stop. Next flight. Well, here are our jewels, of course. We have our Iveco that is the leading company in LNG trucks. I want to say just a few words. LNG started in Italy 4 years ago, and it grew very, very fast. And it was a project done by three main intelligence stakeholders. One was Iveco, one was a fleet owner, that is my member, and one was Eni. They decided that LNG would be the best fuel for heavy duty. So Iveco started the production and the R&D for LNG trucks. The fleet owner, LC3, Mr. Ambrogi, put an order for 30 trucks because it has been decided that a LNG station needs at least 30 trucks every day to fill up on even point, economic even point. And Eni opened the first LNG station in Piacenza. So this was when the LNG for transport heavy duty started. Again, Italy was the leading and was the first country to go ahead with LNG. Since then, all the other OEM, truck manufacturers started CNG, LNG trucks. And now we use LNG for small tractors and for small vehicles, as you see. And I think that for the future, LNG heavy duty will be the leading fuel for heavy duty transport. Iveco is exporting now all over the world. I'm very proud to say that Iveco will start business also in Japan. 5 years ago, I was in Japan talking to LNG in Osaka at Osaka Gas Conference. They look at me as somebody coming from the moon, because for them LNG was something that they know very well because they live on that, but they never thought of LNG for transportation because Japan is mainly focused on hydrogen and electricity. But in 5 years, we were able to change the perspective, and now there are LNG stations in Japan and there will be LNG trucks in Japan. So also Italy is still leading, and I'm very proud that I've done that project. Go ahead, please. Well, we're working also on trains. We are actually working with NAM on technology for trains. And this would be something that in 2 years' time would be ready, the first samples. And it's going to be the train that does the circle here around Lombardia and Veneto. And we think that after the LNG trains, there will be the hydrogen trains. But this is a technology that my associate members are carrying on. Please. Well, so biomethane, and we have biomethane as the key to European Commission to survival. We know that biomethane is the cleanest fuel. I always say that as clean as biomethane, there is only energy from the sun, aeolic, because any other electrical, any other energy, it's coming from plug, is not as clean as biomethane. We have our agricultural companies and very busy for biomethane. We now have subsidies and incentive also from the commissions, and also from the Italian government. So biomethane could really supply a very good part of the need of CNG. Of course, as I mentioned before, it would be enough 30% of biomethane to reduce CO2 of 30%. So that's something very important, and then something that is pushing the technology and the production. So we have to support biomethane, but of course to support biomethane, we have to support natural gas, because without natural gas engines and traditional engines, the biomethane will be lost, they will have no life. So the two things have to go together for the good of the climate. Thank you. Can you go to the next slide? So this is the potential of the biomethane uses in Europe by 2050. You see that the biomethane has as much potential as the hydrogen. And we see that the industry is can use biomethane in a very large scale, giving lots of power to the company, and the transport will also beneficial of biomethane LNG, because as I said, it's the cleanest at the moment, it's the cleanest energy that we can look at. And together with natural gas, we can do a very, very good, we can achieve a very good decarbonization. I want to mention that an LNG trucks now, or biomethane LNG, is capable of to run 15 and 1600 kilometers without stopping. So that shows also an economical return, because you don't need to stop every 300 kilometers to do filling. And this is extremely important to have a very good net of LNG station all around Europe or other countries. I'm trying to push also Gazprom to open LNG station in Russia, because we really need it if we want LNG trucks. Please go ahead. Conclusion. So natural gas stakeholder, we have to join forces. I always say that I remember that 40 years ago, talking about LPG, people were mentioning the poor people fuel. Also, LPG started in Italy before the Second World War, like CNG. CNG was even said that not even the poor, but the gypsy fuel. I mean, something that nobody thought about because of the big tank and the difficult of filling, and also the problem of security at that time, because of course CNG is high pressure. But now we think that we can always be proud and say that we are really the best at the moment, the best for transaction to decarbonization. So I think that we need most technology neutrality. NGV Italy has been one of the most important partner in writing the DAFI, where the neutrality, the technology neutrality has been stated very strongly, and unfortunately is not anymore so much with the commissions. But that's what we push. We want neutrality technology. We have nothing against other technology, but we want to have our own space. We have to keep pushing the life cycle approach, because with the life cycle approach, we have a very good chance to be better than most of other energy at the moment on the scenery. Because if you just look from the tank, the engine, the engine to wheel, it's something, but if you do from life cycle to well to wheel, natural gas is winning for sure. So we are working with NGV Global, with NGV Europe. We work as consultant to many countries. As I say, we are consultant to Japan. I am proudly consultant and very busy with Russia. When 3 years ago, Mr. Viktor Zhukov, the chairman of Gazprom Power, asked me to help him to methanize the Russian transport that in a very different way. Gazprom is the largest natural gas supplier, but very few cars and very few trucks on CNG. I was very happy to accept the duty. And since then, I am cooperating with Gazprom and NGV Russia to help to push and to support trucks and cars in Russia on CNG. So we're working with India now and with other countries. So I think that I have more than 30 years career in alternative fuels that show that I am not a young girl, unfortunately, anymore, but I still think that natural gas, it's something that everybody should be proud to push and to keep as the most important possibility at the moment to decarbonize our climate. So thank you again. And we are at disposal to anybody who want to talk to NGV Italy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Baroni. It was very illuminating. I really enjoyed. I think if we may stay on your last slide, Nadezhda, please, with the conclusions.
Okay.
I think they're quite interesting. And one that, first of all, let me ask our participants, any questions or comments for Ms. Baroni? If not, I'd like to make a comment. I think we should further explore this creating technological neutrality in environmental and energy policies. And possibly our group of experts on gas is the right place to start such conversation. Okay. Our next session will be end of March next year, possibly also like a webinar because of the pandemic. But we would definitely explore this removing barriers to use of gas in transport, and our chairman of the group of experts on gas, Mr. Francisco de la Flor Garcia, will also join and speak maybe in about 20-30 minutes from now. But definitely we should try to explore possible collaboration offline, not to monopolize time with other participants.
That's very good. I know Francisco very well, so it will be great. And as I say, we are also looking at hydromethane for the same reason that if we reach to a blend of 30% of hydrogen in the gas, the natural gas, we also reach 30% less CO2. So NGV Italy is exploring all these projects, and of course we are very happy to participate to a group of experts and share what the group of experts has to tell us. We have always to know from experts. Thank you very much, Branko.
Thank you very much. And also your slide that you showed in a nutshell that hydrogen goes to light applications, gas goes to heavy duty in terms of transportation. Possibly we need to draw a line which goes where, up to what, number of, kilowatts or kilowatt hours, or however we define.
I totally agree. That's extremely important, because we have to look clearly at the future, and the future is tomorrow. Also, if we talk about 250, it seems so far away, but it is tomorrow. And the problem is that OEM have to take decision. And I think that the main problem of this period, the main problem given by this not totally neutrality technology carried on by the European Commission, is the main problem, because OEM, they don't know what to do, they don't know where to go, they don't know where to invest. So I think that a clear understanding of what can be done for at least heavy duty is extremely, extremely important.
We are certainly striving to be agnostic when it comes to technology and very neutral. That's our goal. I think United Nations is really well placed in this sense to create a neutral level playing field, if you wish. And then based on this, we can conclude many maybe things that sound surprising initially, totally different from what people expect, like your experience in Japan, for instance.
Of course, of course. For example, well, you know that in my board, I cannot say anything against any other energy, because I will be, they will shoot at me. So I have to be very clear, very honest, and very neutral, but still bringing up the great possibility of LNG and natural gas. Always be honest and neutral.
Thank you. So we are now leaving, thank you again, the shores of Italy with all this LNG. And we are going to Russia to hear a case study from Belgorod Oblast by Miss. Hello?
I was there many times with the LNG truck with Mr. Zhukov in Belgorod. It was snowing. It was, we could not even land with the plane in Belgorod. We had to land someplace far away. And we were there with an Iveco LNG truck. Not me, of course, but and Mr. Zukov was there, and myself to start the methanization of Russia. We were in Belgorod, we were in Rostov, we were in many others. So very, I think I wish to Mr. Abramov a very good time. And,
thank you. So
yeah,
this is a
thank you.
perfect segue to our next presenter, which, as I said, is coming from Belgorodska Oblast, Mr. Oleg Abramov, the Vice Governor of the Oblast, of the region, and he will tell us about the development of markets in this oblast for gas engine fuel markets. Mr. Abramov, the floor is yours.
Добрый день, уважаемые участники форума. Рад всех приветствовать на площадке ООН. Белгородская область приступила к реализации пилотного проекта по развитию газомоторного топлива в феврале 2019 года при поддержке Министерства энергетики Российской Федерации, компании «Газпром» и личном участии специального представителя президента Российской Федерации по взаимодействию с форумом стран-экспортеров газа Виктором Алексеевичем Зубковым. Прошу слайд 2. В рамках, слайд 2, пожалуйста. В рамках данного проекта реализуется дорожная карта по опережающему развитию рынка газомоторного топлива до 2021 года включительно. Сформирована рабочая группа, в состав которой вошли руководители органов власти всех уровней, представители заинтересованных компаний, потенциальных потребителей. Слайд 3. Пилотный проект реализуется по 3 основным направлениям. Это создание газозаправочной инфраструктуры, это переоборудование транспорта на использование компримированного природного газа и создание системы государственной поддержки для участников рынка газомоторного топлива. Итак, первое направление – это создание газозаправочной инфраструктуры. Правительством области утверждена программа и план-схема территориального размещения объектов инфраструктуры, исходя из учета потребностей в газомоторном топливе в объеме 200 миллионов кубометров и заправки до 50 тысяч единиц транспортных средств в год. Это слайд 4. До конца 2020 года в крупных населенных пунктах и вдоль основных транспортных магистралей нашей области с наибольшим количеством потребителей газа и топлива будет действовать 39 заправочных комплексов. Таким образом, в этом году мы даже перевыполним ключевую задачу Минэнерго по достижению целевого уровня развития газозаправочной инфраструктуры. Это одна станция на 60 тысяч населения. У нас будет примерно в 1,5 раза больше. Следующее направление – это переоборудование транспорта. Слайд 5. В текущем году, благодаря принятым мерам поддержки Минэнерго, а я хотел бы от лица всех участников программы высказать благодарность Министерству энергетики, которое в краткие сроки сумело сделать целостную, комфортную для нашего взаимодействия, для работы программу, которая позволила нам вот так масштабно реализовывать уже региональную программу. В этом году министерству удалось сделать практически невозможно, о чем я говорю, увеличение скидки на переоборудование на 2 раза. А с учетом газпромовской программы, что тоже отдельно спасибо Газпром газомоторное топливо, почти 90% затрат компенсируется участникам этого рынка. В настоящее время, как пример приведу, мы перевели уже практически 65% автобусного парка области. В целом ставим себе задачу, 2022 год это заключительный год, мы для себя понимаем, что весь общественный пассажирский транспорт перейдет на газомоторное топливо. Также мы приняли областную программу областного муниципального транспорта, перевод на природный газ. Срок мы поставили 3 года и планируем перевести не менее 70% транспорта. Это примерно около 3000 автомобилей. Многие компании крупные агрохолдинги, промышленные компании также активно включились в реализацию пилотного проекта. На будущей неделе вместе с заместителем министра Ньютсоном Антоном Юрьевичем мы будем открывать очередные заправки и смотреть перевод транспортных средств, я имею в виду большегрузные машины, на газомоторное топливо. Таким образом, к концу 2020 года в рамках утвержденной дорожной карты и взаимодействия с Минэнерго будет переведено, закуплено не менее 2000 автомобилей на газомоторном топливе. Теперь третье направление, 6-й слайд. Реализация проекта по созданию механизмов государственной поддержки прежде всего рассчитана с учетом программ Минэнерго. Это первое, это представление субсидий на строительстве станций до 40 миллионов рублей на одну станцию. Это субсидии на переоборудование транспортных средств, как я уже сказал, с учетом Минэнерговской программы 60%, Газпрома 90%. Это инвестиционные льготы участникам программы. Я о них дополнительно скажу. Это предоставление земельных участков для строительства станций и АГНКС и станций по переводу в аренду без проведения торгов. В Белгородской области приняты соответствующие законы о налоговых льготах. Это пониженная на 50% ставка при уплате транспортного налога для владельцев соответствующих транспортных средств. Это установлена пониженная на 50% ставка по земельному налогу для юридических лиц, владельцев НКС и станций по переоборудованию. При объявлении конкурсных процедур на оказание транспортных пассажирских услуг отдается приоритет транспорту на газомоторном топливе. И на льготных условиях предоставляются парковочные места, 50% скидка транспорту на газомоторном топливе. Также субъекты предпринимательства, которые реализуют эти программы, в приоритетном порядке пользуются мерами поддержки в рамках программ развития малого и среднего предпринимательства Белгородской области. Все эти меры призваны решить, как мы считаем, наша задача достаточно амбициозная. И Мария Барони хорошо это знает. Уже в этом году создать 39 заправочных комплексов. И они сегодня, мы заканчиваем эту программу. И 20 центров по переоборудованию транспорта. Это нам позволит в 2022 году перевести на метан не менее 20 тысяч автомобилей, сократить объем выбросов в окружающую среду от транспорта не менее чем на 10%. Спасибо за внимание.
Thank you, Mr. Abramov. Very interesting. Any questions about our case study from Belgorod? So I don't see any. I think you provided very interesting hope, so to speak, for compressed natural gas vehicles. As we heard in Europe, it's more and more difficult to grow market. And I do hope that this pilot case study from Belgorod Oblast will be applicable in many countries covered by this project. And I'm really looking forward to transfer some of those experiences to countries which are relatively small, so rather compared in size closer to Belgorod Oblast than the Russian Federation. So with this, I think we will have to stay in touch and try to engage you in our future activities as we go next year in sub-regional and parts of countries that are also covered by this project. So thank you again, and with this we move to our next and final.
May I say one
Please.
thing?
Yes, Maria Rosa, of course.
Mr. Zukov, we travel down south, the agricultural region like Belgorod, Rostov, and so on, because one of the aim was also to try to make the transportation of vegetable and agricultural items less expensive. Because right now, if you travel with a truck of, let's say, of crops or so on, you pay as much as you travel with a truck full of very expensive goods. So one of the reasons of Mr. Zukov, that by the way, he has a degree at university in agriculture, was also to help these countries to have a less expensive transport cost. And that's very, very important for those areas.
So Chernus and methane go together quite well.
Yeah. So that's why was the reason why we travel for months around those countries. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you for your comment.
And the president of Belgrade, that now is not anymore in charge, he was in Milano last year in order to see what we are doing here. And I think they learn very well.
Thank you. Okay, so by the way, is this possible, some connection in terms of biomethane and all those agricultural residues? I'm asking Ms. Baroni.
Of course,
to connect those experiences, because biomethane seems to be a very important component of future energy.
Sure. And what is different is that we received the Blue Rally virtually in Rome a month ago. And for the first time, the Blue Rally that is organized by Gazprom and Uniper, and then normally arrives in St. Petersburg during the St. Petersburg International Gas Forum. We had a stop in Rome. We had a seminar, we have a roundtable. For the first time, they asked me to mention also biomethane. And for me, it was something really new. And I was very happy that also Gazprom and Russia opens to biomethane, because I say it's the key to be clean, but also I think that we have to think of maybe a 10% or 20% of biomethane and then natural gas, nothing away from Gazprom. And this is going to help also the agricultural areas, because they can sell their crops to become a biomethane. And in Italy, it's extremely important, because instead of biomass for electricity, now most of the biomethane enterprise companies prefer to go on biomethane. So, because it helps. The second crops, instead of be thrown away, you can use it to make money.
Thank you for your comment. So let's move on. Going to invite now Mr. Francisco de la Flor Garcia from ENEGAS, and also chair of the group of experts on gas. We kept the best for the last, so Mr. de la Flor, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Branko. Good afternoon, Dobry dzień, if I may. Being the last one has some advantages and disadvantages. A lot has been already said, so the challenge is not to repeat or even contradict. I will probably skip most of what I have prepared. Instead, I will use this slot to stress some points. Main messages. Stay here in this slide. I will start with the conclusions, and then I will use the rest of the time to illustrate them and with some slides, picture and data. We are well aware that the UNECE region is huge, well covering the northern hemisphere, 56 countries, different energy mixes. But what I will say is really applicable to many places in these countries and subregions. Then my statements. First is the LNG. I will basically focus on LNG. It's a quite suitable tool to extend the natural gas demand to remote areas, not connected to the grid or while the pipelines are built, to allow the penetration of natural gas and population to benefit from it, being a clean energy for clean skies, industries, and homes. Second, LNG is even more suitable to be used as fuel in the transportation sector, as said by many speakers, notably in the heavy duty, rail, and above all, the maritime. It is today the best one fitting with the specifications and requirements of international organizations to cope with pollution. Third, in both cases, this is no doubt that the contributions of LNG to be approved fast and cost efficient, I will stress this, cost efficient decarbonization of the energy and transportation sector if compared with some other alternatives. Final remark, decarbonization is not electrification. Is not electrification. It can be achieved with the adequate combination of electrons and molecules. Again, it's the most cost-efficient way, covering all technologies and technological development. Then, my agenda covers these topics. Allow me to start with the presentation of the company I work for, and just 1 minute, but relevant to understand why I'm so focused on LNG. Next, please. Yeah, as Branko said, I work for ENEGAS. ENEGAS is a company, Spanish company, yes, pure infrastructure operator, incorporated in the 70s, so nearly 50 years ago. Some data and futures of and assets of our company: 11,000 kilometers of high pressure, only high pressure. High pressure means 72, 80, 140, 200 bar. And almost all the functioning UES in Spain and the vast majority of the LNG terminals. Next, please. LNG, just a historical just a reference due to the lack of domestic production and pipeline interconnection capacity with the rest of Europe. We had to rely from the very beginning on the imports of LNG, so that we had to develop some import facilities located alongside our costs to supply to a big country, big compared with the EU standards, not with the Russian Federation, of course. Once the Spanish natural gas market reached some maturity, we started to leverage our expertise to expand our activities abroad, notably in the LNG infrastructure business. And today we are one of the companies with the most LNG import terminals in the world, probably the largest if considering only pure infrastructure operators, either directly or 100% managed and operated or through affiliates and joint ventures. Here in these slides, concrete data allocation of the capacities of our LNG import terminals, either in Europe or abroad. Next, please. Probably not too, I will stay here only 4 or 5 figures, no more, just to set the picture on the worldwide LNG panorama, just completely what Luis Beltran said before. Here I could take the IGU report or the GIGNL. I will use here the GIGNL. 21 exporting countries, 42 importing countries, 355 million tons of LNG traded, 600 vessels voyaging from liquefaction to regasification facilities, and I go to the point, LNG truck loading facilities in 18 countries, 50% in Europe, although China alone represents 80% of quantities, and together with Japan, 90. Spain goes third in the world and accounts 2/3 of the EU truck loading. Sorry, Maria Rosa, it's the case where Italy is not first. No, sorry. The link to the website is proof here. Quite good information on the sector can be taken from IGU and also GIGNL. Next, please. Truck loading. On truck loading, we had to rely, I said, on the LNG to start and expand the use of natural gas in our country. A relevant feature of our system is that at the same time the gas grid was built, reaching near areas to the LNG import terminals. Some other more distant territories could also benefit from the use of natural gas in the industrial and residential sectors by supplying these places with LNG and on-site regasification in small satellite plants. This week, I think yesterday to be precise, we celebrate the 50th anniversary when the first truck, LNG truck, was delivered from Barcelona LNG import terminal to Figueras, a small city located close to the French border. Next, please, Nadia. Here, all our LNG import facilities do have truck loading points. The average loading in the past years is around 40,000 units, and as from the beginning, several hundred thousands, probably 1 million. In 2019 alone, accounted for 13 terawatt hour loading 43,369 trucks. Next, please, slide number 7, right. And then as from that year, 1970, hundreds and hundreds of destinations, more than 13, for instance, in 2019 were on the list. The vast majority, of course, within the Iberian Peninsula, but also in the rest of in the last years to other European destinations, as far as to the Balkan region. Again, complete data on the destinations can be obtained from our website. Then zooming up on this LNG infrastructure focus. Here you have in the next slide the GLE small scale LNG map 2020. Nadesha, next please. Right. This is one of the very complete set of maps we produce within GIE. I have several hats. In this case, GIE board member. Also, I used to be the GLE president for years. GLE is the column devoted to LNG infrastructure. Also, the map and the information can be downloaded from our website, and quite significant amount of updated and accurate information is accessible here because it's provided by us, the members. Those of you in the audience interested to learn and to expand your activities in this field in Europe, you have probably here the main source of data. And from now on, I will refer exclusively to mobility. First on road, I will be very concrete, not to repeat. Next, please. On the 28th of November, there were 71 LNG stations open to public in the Iberian Peninsula, and 29 more projected or under construction. Heavy duty vehicles do have a quite significant network to fill their tanks. I think that the chicken and egg dilemma, also referred before, shouldn't be an issue here, provided that there are already a number of stations and new ones could be added if needed, because the number of customers increases accordingly. By the way, in many locations, the users can fill either with CNG or LNG. An interesting figure, in 2019, the number of gas vehicles has grown twice as much as the number of electric vehicles. Probably will be the last year or not. If only this trend could continue, it will show that the cost-efficient criteria is retained. Not only the cost-efficient, but I will stress what Andrea said Andrea Guerini in his presentation on the analysis, full LCA analysis, and then probably if the authorities take into consideration this full LCA, the results would be quite different. Because you may be aware that if a car uses CNG, the total emissions, considering that this full LCA, are lower than electric cars, considering a number of years, according to the chart mentioned and used by Andrea. And then if biomethane or bio-LNG is used instead, these cars will be always, during all its life, less emitters than electric cars. Remember what I say, that decarbonisation is not electrification, and this has to be achieved at the most cost-efficient way. Stressing here again that the gas cars are part of this decarbonisation future, should be part. Next, number 10, please. Railway mobility. Also, was a quick reference before. What to say? We are convinced that the LNG is a quick, reliable, and cost-efficient solution to implement in the non-electrified railway network. There are thousands of kilometers of here in either in Spain and also elsewhere in Europe, the testing phase has already been performed, and the results are quite satisfactory. So this again could be a very good contribution, quick contribution, and cost-efficient contribution to the decarbonisation, replacing diesel by LNG. Next, please. Now coming to my favorite one is maritime mobility. As you know or guess, one big vessel consumes the same amount of gas as 20, 30, 50,000 cars. So that the impact of the environment is significant. Every drop is important, and natural gas cars are important, but for me, vessels are even more. We're having the significant number of LNG imports and storage, LNG storage facilities alongside the cost and experience to manipulate this good. I say maybe 1 million lots in the past years. There is no doubt that the bunkering services can be provided easily. Several features are feasible and already provided: truck to ship, pipe to ship, and ship to ship. They are quite quick and safe operations. Next, please, some examples, quickly, not to repeat what has been said. On top of the slides, two pictures when ships are bunkered from trucks. On top right, a ferry serving for Balearia, the company that believes that LNG is a good economic and environmental solution to feed their fleet, and they are already using it in half a dozen of their units. Bunkering operations are taking off. In 2019, were performing 200, and more than 800 in 2020 until November. A number of vessels, I think was also referred before, a number of vessels in operations just fueled by LNG. We are speaking about 175, 203 more or on order, and further 141 LNG ready in operations and sitting on order books. So all those comply with International Maritime Organization regulations, and again, if only this could be foster in the future and push in the future, because that will be very good for the decarbonisation and the quality of the water in our ports. Next, please. Just on maritime mobility, there are several options. Also refer. Branko stressed that we are at the UNECE, we try to be agnostic on technology. Luis Bertrand also put a very nice picture on those options. Time will say, but what I can highlight here is that LNG is certainly a quite good one. Next, on combination, yes, the first combination, I mean the multimodality, a combination of all the others together. First, pilot testing of LNG transport by road, rail, and sea successfully carried out in Europe in December 2018. Yes, was transporting LNG in a ISO container. Yes, container adjusted to ISO standards from Huelva LNG terminal to Melilla by road, rail, and sea. This pilot demonstrates the effectiveness of the ISO container as a versatile and flexible solution for transporting natural gas. And my last, I think is my last one. Yeah. Next, please. Yeah, is the to refer to one project, a very interesting project in the European landscape. There are some others, but this project is what we call Core LNG Hype. This is was started in 2014. as a challenge in innovation for the implementation of viability and regulatory studies and pilot projects to post LNG as fuel, led by Puerto del Estado. It's a public entity here and coordinated by us, by ENAGAS. Then to solve this dilemma of demand in the port level, to boost LNG as sustainable maritime fuel to reduce emissions, and the development of national policy framework regarding EU Directive 2014/94. 49 partners, sorry, 49, sorry, 49 partners, 21 public port entities, 48 industrial, 300 million budget funded with 72 by institutions, 42 developments, and around 90 stakeholders. So as you are aware, all those projects that are financed by the European institutions, then the outcome is shared with the rest of the European landscape. And I think that that's all I wanted to share with you. Sorry if I took more time that allocated, and happy to respond any questions if you, the audience or you, Branko, want to ask. Thanks.
Thank you, Francisco. Such a wealth of information. I don't know even where to begin. So let me first see with our audience. Are there any questions and comments for Mr. De La Flor?
Well, first of all, it's a good match between Spain and Italy. At the moment, you are ahead, especially maritime. But you know, the Italians are slow, but when they start, they can go fast. So let's go, and in any case, all together for LNG and natural gas.
Good. Branko.
Any other comment by our participants, audience? I particularly like your idea of multimodal, what you showed from Huelva that goes to Melilla. I think it's quite interesting and maybe applicable in many countries in the eastern part of our region, how you play, and some research, whatever we could do, I think could be quite useful. Maybe in March we could discuss further multimodalities of LNG. Just an idea.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. In my address, I wanted to put both things. Just the small scale, understood at small scale, because it's neither small, not new business, because I say hundreds of thousands of trucks were loaded, but for our region, not only the western part is well covered, but I was wondering to which extent these experiences could be also useful for the eastern part of our region, but not only for mobility. Mobility is relevant part, but also to extend the use and consumption of natural gas to remote areas. So that because we do believe, I repeat, I don't know if fourth or fifth time, that decarbonization natural gas can contribute to the decarbonization of the worldwide panorama, and this probably is the fastest way to do it, notably in those areas where coal and other fuels are already in place. So by replacing those fuels by natural gas, I think we can contribute to that. We in the group of experts on gas are convinced that this is the case, but also we are aware that other gases, and this is group of experts on gas, are different gases. We are aware that other low carbon or decarbonized gases will come. So let's put all in the basket, and then depending on the place, depending on the area, depending on the region and the situation, let's use the most suitable and most cost-efficient to foster the decarbonization.
All molecules together. Mr. Aristenbaev, did you have a comment? Да, конечно.
Aristenbaev, Талгат. Спасибо большое, господин Франциско, за прекрасную презентацию. Хотелось бы один вопрос уточнить. Вот все проекты по переходу на компримированный жирный природный газ по развитию рынка газонного топлива должны финансироваться. Был ли опыт или можно ли, скажем, узнать у вас и у группы экспертов, которые сейчас присутствуют, опыт финансирования проектов по развитию рынка газомоторного топлива через глобальные климатические фонды и глобальные экологические фонды и зеленые климатические фонды. В принципе, эти же проекты касаются, скажем, и снижения вредных выбросов, и в то же время парниковых газов. Возможно ли привлечение, скажем, на финансирование данных проектов средств из данных фондов?
Спасибо for the question. Quite relevant one, either way. Our experience, I mean, most of those projects were developed until now were, let's say, market-driven or company-driven. The experience I share with you regarding what we call core LNG hype. By the way, there is also a website where a lot of information can be obtained from that. Our experience is with the European funds. European funds, there are some facilities that can be used for this kind of projects. In this case, I can not tell you exactly which was the facility. Yes, yeah, the Connecting Europe facility, but was focused on in the European landscape. Just more international organizations, just funding. We have not that experience, but for sure that could be checked with them. I don't know, World Bank or international banks, etc. My only concern right now is what is lately is called taxonomy. Just the openness of the international institutions, investment banks and institutions just to consider natural gas as, let's say, deserving, clean enough to deserve this kind of funds. But they should be aware that in many countries, in many regions of the globe, and notably in UNECE area, natural gas should be energy to enhance and to foster the decarbonization at an affordable cost. So it's up to the governments also to push to the international institutions, financial institutions, and to demonstrate that they have to trust also on this energy, because that will contribute to that process, that decarbonization. Spasibo.
Thank you, Francisco. Any other question for Mr. Delfor?
Спасибо.
If not, let me quickly go to our roundtable discussion. We are a little bit behind the schedule, so I will just invite you, all of you, if you have some final comment, question, or remark to make.
Probably from my side, just taking advantage of that I was the last one to intervene. What I have in mind is how we just share among us what could be the best way to disseminate these activities, the work we do, how to reach the governments, member states, the officers, the policy officers, just to demonstrate that this is part of the solution. So this is my remark, that we need to intensify the work on the. I don't want to use the word lobbying, but teaching, I would say better. The teaching, we use our teaching materials and then convince them that this is part of the solution. That's my remark. Thanks.
Thank you very much. So, Mr. Foster, would you like to add something?
Sure, thank you very much. Hello, everybody. This has been actually a very fascinating discussion and points to the importance of the topic going forward. I'd just like to make a couple of remarks. Clearly, we do plan to stay active in the field. You've heard the chair, Francisco, with his passion and enthusiasm. So we will continue to work with our partners within ECE and transport and environment, renewables, but also with IGU, a Natural Gas Vehicle Association, the EU, and the range of private sector participants. Francisco's pointed to the importance of molecules versus electricity, and he's talking in terms of the transport sector. I think the overall importance of gases for the 2030 agenda is quite important. So we're talking about methane, natural gas, LNG, CNG, and the rest. We're talking about CO2, obviously controlling emissions of greenhouse gases, and we're talking about hydrogen. One of the things that we're considering, and I think it might be interesting for this group, if we talk about decarbonizing transport, and Maria Rosa said this, but working on well-to-wheel and doing that across primary fuels, across energy carriers, across transport modes, thinking about what is the demand for mobility in the future, looking at urban organization, moving goods and people, new ways of working given what's going on with the pandemic now. And these would all be part of a really broad view of where can the world go on transport if we're trying to decarbonize. Now, UNECE, our focus is always on normative instruments, best practices, approaches like that. And a great example is that international certificate that was discussed where you're trying to have a specific benefit. I could go on for hours. I won't do that to you, but this has been fantastic. So I'd like to thank everyone for their excellent participation. And at ECE, we're very happy to continue with the collaboration. Thank you, Branko.
Thank you, Mr. Foster. Very illuminating. Thank you. Now I'd like to invite my colleague, Ms. Hamrakulova, to walk us through the next steps. So stay us with for a few more minutes just to tell you what will happen next. Nadezhda, please.
Thank you, Branko, for giving me the floor. I will just say that we had a very interesting discussion today, and thank you very much for this active participation. As we indicated earlier, that this will be this is the first event of this project, so-called inaugural event. And the next steps are previewed for 2021, which will be the main part of and the main time of this project implementation. As Mr. Zinin already mentioned in his presentation, we're going to focus our next steps on studies, on analysis and assessment from different angles on the development of the CNG and LNG infrastructure, on identifying case studies and other activities, how to encourage and increase the share of CNG and LNG in the transportation sector. We also will look more detailed on what are the possibilities to overcome barriers or existing barriers to this. So I will not go into further details due to the time constraint, but you see on the slide that we will have a number of different activities that are previewed for at least the first half of next year. What will happen after? We will definitely organize an event to disseminate those, let's say, the results of the studies and analysis that we are going to undertake. Further on, we also very much encourage you to provide your suggestions, to provide your feedback on what would be the actual interest and the topics to discover further. Today, during discussions, we had already a number of interesting suggestions, and I personally noted, and I believe that in the due course of the implementation of this project, we will try to address those suggestions and interest in going deeper into certain aspects of the increase or the share of CNG and LNG in the transportation sector. Here on the slide, you just have our contact details with the Branco, and I encourage you to send us your suggestions, your feedback, perhaps some questions or clarifications, and we will be very happy to address them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nadezhda, and I wish to thank you all to our panelists for very interesting and discussions with a lot of material which will be part of our report. Thank you to all participants for your patience. It's been almost 4 hours that we've been discussing this topic. We hope to stay in touch, and with this, we bring this webinar to an end. So thank you again, and hope to see you next year in similar events. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.